A lot of reminders about what's wrong with college football. And let me be clear, there's plenty wrong right now with college football, the calendar and the portal and no rails on the NIL stuff. There's plenty that needs to be figured out. But yesterday, I think, was a reminder about what is very much right in college football. An expanded playoff, big time win for the sport. It gives you the parity that I think we were talking about. It's no longer the SEC Invitational. And, we got a little tired of watching that year after year. And I think this is good for the sport. It's good for markets like Indiana's, teams that are in the ACC, the Big 12, the whatever the Pac-12 looks like in the future, seeing Miami go in there and contend for one, and just being able to play their way in, right? The Utahs of 2004 and 2009, the Boise States, the teams that didn't have a chance, they just watched a team in Miami who many said shouldn't have been in the playoff play their way into the national championship and show that they are, at least one of the class of college football. And yeah, if you look at Indiana going undefeated and winning a national championship, you look at your market and you say, hey, why not us? Why not us?
And that was kind of the mantra of Kirk Cignetti and his roster all year long. And why not us has turned into a national championship for Indiana. What a night, man. Really, really cool stuff. All right, Ted Robinson, our first guest, right out of the gates on a busy, busy Tuesday show. But before Uncle Ted stops by, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
Big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. With a new social feeds feature on Prize Picks, you can share your picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tailor-fade our picks with just one click. Step number 1, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, as I referenced kind of off the top, not to be hyperbolic, but, when it comes to doing this job, what you cheer for are stories. And you cheer for seismic moments in games that feel like they could matter and mean something moving forward. And that's how I felt last night watching the Indiana Hoosiers win the college football national championship. And prior to the start of this season, no college football program had lost more games in the history of the sport. 16-0. It's only happened once, and that's our good friends at Yale. Those nerds did that in 1894. So back in the day, Yale went undefeated. So essentially, this is historic in every way, shape, or form. And the question comes down to, and this is something that I'm always fascinated with, what is the difference in a sport where the margins are so slim, like football, both college and pro? What is the difference between the teams that actually are able to hoist trophies? How do they do it? What's the process? What's working? What isn't? And this is the task of every administrator and athletic director in college athletics. How do we replicate something that feels very seismic and special? Now, number one is you got to get the coach right. Okay, that's it. Regardless of what your bank account looks like, and certainly that is a part of it, and we'll get to it, regardless of what your budget is, regardless of the NIL checks you're able to write these young men, you have to get the coach right. That is number one. And when it comes to what we've seen here locally in our market over the past little bit, there was a battle to keep Kalani and Provo after Penn State came a-calling, and there's a reason why. Kalani has proof of concept. And it's no longer a situation where Kalani has to sell the potential of BYU. He can sell the reality of where Brigham Young is today. Okay, 2 straight seasons where you're double-digit wins, you're going to bowl games, you're beating good teams, you're right on the doorstep of winning Big 12 championships, going to a CFP, and, yes, attendant to it, you have an NIL ocean at your disposal where you can be the highest bidder at times. Yes, the highest bidder despite the messaging and the propaganda coming from Provo, in order to attract talent for basketball and football. And the product on the field is proof of concept that Kalani is the right guy. He's able to win games. He's able to compete for conference championships. He's able to send players to the NFL, and armed now with the massive power of the purse, LDS Church attendant to Kalani's proof of concept, BYU football is in a really good place, and so is BYU basketball. Now, on the Utah side, okay, the inherent risk of the decision that was just made, and the decision that was just made is this. You are trading the known for the new, okay? So you decided to move on from a head coach who, over the course of 21 years, built your program up as one of the most respected, preeminent college football programs in the Western United States. And for whatever reason, all the reasons behind the scenes that we've talked about, whether it's powerful donors and boosters, whether it's an athletic director that was tired of the coach, or whether there was the coach that just needed to recharge his batteries, the risk that Utah football has just undertaken is saying goodbye to the familiar and ushering in the new, okay? And say what you want, Kyle was awesome here. And we just don't know what it's going to look like under Morgan. Now, we have the transfer portal that is come and gone, and you guys can look up the rankings yourself, but rankings are just rankings, okay? And this is bringing me back to Indiana. Indiana just beat 4 straight teams with at least 40-plus 5-star players. Indiana has 8 5-star players on their roster, okay? So when it comes to the transfer portal stuff, according to On3, Utah lands at number 67 in the country. Now, what On3 weighs is not just additions, but also what you lost. And the reality is we don't know exactly how this is going to look for Utah football based off of a lot of these kids coming from smaller schools, and that's a model that Utah's followed and been able to be very successful with it. See Devin Dampier and Jason Beck from New Mexico. Only time will tell if these transfers that Utah has been able to bring in will translate to results on the field. How will they fit in with Kevin's new offensive system? You get Devin back, you get Bird back, you get Wayshawn back. You do get some good skill position players back, some solid additions on the outside. We still need to learn what the offense and defensive line will look like because the trenches are where you need to rebuild. But what can we learn from what Kirk Cignetti just did over the course of 2 years? You have proof of concept. Elon, James Madison, you know the guy has a process. You know he knows how to win. And then ultimately, as you get the right head coach, you also need the right quarterback. I mean, this is a sport that is the ultimate example of team, okay? So you can't reduce it to one position or one person. It is a program that's built with people you believe in, doing the right things habitually every single day, and then letting the results speak for themselves based off your habits and your process, right? But you do need the right coach, and you do need the right quarterback. And Indiana clearly had that in Kirk Cignetti and Fernando Mendoza. And for the 3rd straight year, they're going to add a piece under center out of the transfer portal. And this time it'll be the Josh Hoover kid from TCU, who's thrown for nearly 10,000 yards, 3 years as a starter. He is a little bit turnover prone. Indiana is a team that plays very mistake-free football. And if you're Miami, you're bemoaning the fact that a special team snafu, a blocked punt that led to a touchdown, a horrible offsides penalty, and the face mask on 3rd and 17 in addition to the pass interference. Like, this was a situation where the margin was so thin, Miami just made about 3 or 4 mistakes, and honestly, that has kind of been their MO. That is a talented, big, physical football team that's not going anywhere for quite some time. Last night was Indiana's ability just to stay clean. Like, they did not boat race Miami like I thought a lot of people thought that they were going to. They just didn't make as many errors as Miami, and that's kind of been the deal all year long. The Mark Fletcher Jr. kid is a hell of a talent. He did throw a punch after the game. We'll see what sort of discipline comes his way. Carson Beck has always struck me as a very overrated player. I mean, of course, he has a ton of college football starts under his belt. He made a horrific mistake last night to kind of end the game. The Malachi Toney kid, who is a Miami high school football legend, was absolutely dynamite. Indiana went to Charlie Becker a bunch down the stretch on the back shoulder throws because they liked the matchup that he had there. Indiana ran the football. Fernando Mendoza had 27 pass attempts, 16 of 27, and his 4th and 5 QB draw touchdown is this year's Tim Tebow jump pass, Vince Young sweep. Like, that will go down in college football history lore And I would imagine there will be a statue in Bloomington of Mendoza making that run. Indiana built a roster of grown-ups. They've got a player that's about to be 25. There's not a lot of 18, 19-year-olds that were in the mix as far as starting and being productive. These are 22, 23-year-olds that have played a lot of college football. And finally, all of the things that we have complained about when it comes to the way this sport has changed, namely transfer portal and NIL, I think it's time to admit that it's actually led to a better on-field product, love it or hate it. And whether you love it or hate it is probably based on who you cheer for and how the ecosystem of college football has affected your program. Meaning, if you're a BYU fan right now, you're feeling pretty good. And I would imagine if you're a Utah fan, there's a little bit of anxiety and you're a little bit nervous to see how this thing is going to go. Now, I do think Morgan's the right guy, and I do think he will receive the financial support that he needs. And hopefully the proof of concept that the Utah football had under Kyle will continue under Morgan, which is namely this. You can throw the rankings out the window. We'll grab the lesser-known players. We will develop them, and they will become us, and we will not become them, as Kyle used to say. But a historic moment last night, make no mistake, in Miami, Florida, as the Indiana Hoosiers completed a 16-0 season in college football and became your college football national champ. It was a hell of a night for the sport. I have not seen the ratings yet, the overnight splits. I anticipated that the attention would be down, and I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. But as soon as we get the numbers, we'll bring them to you. All right, we'll catch a break. But today is going to be pretty much all college football. We're going to bring in Ted Robinson coming up on the other side, our buddy from the Pac-12 Network. Bill Riley, Dave Bartu, Spencer Linton, busy Tuesday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Little James Taylor on a Tuesday? What's going on with you? James Taylor is like, he feels like a big hug. It's like a safe space.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know why, but it's always good.
Roll with it all day. You have my permission.
Okay.
All right.
Easy.
Speaking of a big old hug, was that awkward to bring in Ted Robinson? He just makes me feel safe because he's like my uncle. Hello, Ted. How are you, sir?
Hey, Spence. Hey, listen, some things are timeless. James Taylor is timeless.
Yes, indeed, Ted, but so are you, sir. And I'm not calling you old, just to be clear, but you are also timeless. That's my opinion.
Well, thank you. I'm a veteran. I'm proud to say it.
All right, we're dealing, Ted. I don't know if you're on speaker. It sounds like you are joining us live in a cave. I'm not sure exactly what's going on.
All right, hang on. We'll adjust here in a second. Here, hang on. And
Ted, you there?
all right, that should be better.
Yes, much better, much better. Thank you, sir, for that. I appreciate the time today. So we started the show off, Ted, with, and obviously when you've been covering this stuff for as long as we've been in the space, it's rare that a game or a moment feels notable and historic and seismic. And I feel like Indiana winning the college football national championship is something that could be a seminal moment when we look back on it in a number of different years for a number of different reasons. But your overall takeaways from not just what we saw in a vacuum last night, but this 2-year project with Curt Cignetti that has culminated in a national championship.
Spence, I think you hit a key phrase there. That's a 2-year project. This wasn't one game. This was 2 years in the making, and people can remember the last team to beat Indiana was Notre Dame in the playoff last year, and it was one-sided. And that set off all of the speculation. Should Indiana have been there? Did Indiana belong? Because they have no history or heritage. Well, when they back it up this year with an unprecedented year, I'll give you my personal sense, and I started thinking about this a little bit early this morning. To me, there's a little bit of a similarity, not exact, to what Herb Brooks did in 1980 with the U.S. hockey team. And I'm partial to this because I started as a hockey announcer and I knew a lot. I knew Herb. I knew a lot of the players on that Olympic team. But my point is, and I understand it's not exact, but you upended a system. What Herb did was take a bunch of college kids and mold them into a unit that he believed could go out and beat many of the other countries in the world and then finally take down the king at the time, which was Russia. Russia was viewed as unbeatable, as Cuba was in baseball. And now what Indiana did this year to take down Ohio State was viewed unthinkable, right? Ohio State was the king. And it's exceptional. And I think it will have a lasting impact on where we are in college football, because the other sense I have of this, Spence, and this is again part of my background, as a teenager, I was a caddy. I grew up a caddy. That was my job. And where I caddied growing up in just outside New York City, there were a decent number of members who resented Mondays because Mondays the caddies could play. And these members didn't like the fact that the caddies could play on the same golf course that they belonged to. And this is a little bit of what's happening now. The quote unquote caddies of college football can now play with Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia, and LSU reacts by going out and spending $1 billion to have Lane Kiffin come in, and Lane Kiffin will basically screw over LSU the way he's done these other schools. It's going to happen. Just don't know how or when. But everybody can play now. So when Nick Saban is on the ESPN desk, part of me says it's because he lost his advantage. He knew it. He saw it coming. And other great coaches who have retired in the last year or two understood that the advantage they had is now gone. Everybody can play with them. It's the most level playing field we've seen.
It is, and I mean, there's so many things about it that do feel seismic and historic. I'll continue to use those phrases, and 8 blue chip recruits, a bunch of players that followed him from James Madison, a bunch of coaches that followed Curt Cignetti from James Madison. The last new champion in the sport was Florida in 96, 97. And Ted, you and I really the show is entering, we're in our 7th year now. So you've been on a lot over the course of the years. So it's been good to have the perspective of the old college football ecosystem, and then have you kind of help us understand how the sport is changing throughout the course of the past few years. And look, there are still a lot of things, I'll just use that term, guardrails, that people continue to use that need to be put in place to corral some of the chaos. But is it fair to say that the transfer portal and NIL may have actually led to a better product overall on the field? Is that fair to say?
Well, I think if you limit it to the games, yes, I think that's very true. And I've, some wise people have been writing and commenting on that very thing, and I'm trying to embrace some of that because, like many people of my vintage, we shake our heads constantly and voice various forms of frustration over the complete disintegration of any structure. And look, I'm still, as of this past season, I still did some Pac-12 football games because the games are still good.
Yeah.
I love the games. And that's, to your point, I think the games are absolutely right. And look, when there's, it's the balance in sport. How do I phrase this properly, Spence? It's the balance in sport. You want dynasties, you want champions, but they can't be forever. Nobody can win the championship 12 years in a row. Baseball's going through this ongoing battle of, 2/3 of the teams start the season feeling they have no chance. It's a miserable way to operate. You can't have that. You also can't have complete anarchy where everybody has a chance every year, right? You want to have a favorite. Everybody wants to have somebody they're shooting at. So, you know what I'm saying? There's a balance that all, I think, team sport tries to find. Baseball's fighting that right now with the Dodgers. And the good part to me is the Dodgers have won a lot, but they've only won 2 World Series in 10 years of dynasty. They haven't won 4 in a row or 5 out of 6, et cetera. So back to your point about college football, yes, the games are in essence better. More teams feel like they have a chance. Whatever happens with the playoff, they need to continue to provide access to the air quote caddies that will keep them going, that the second tier of college football still has a belief they can play against the big boys at some point. And ultimately, there's going to be a tipping point, and I'm no longer trying to guess when that's going to be, but somehow, some way, something's going to happen, whether it's politically done or internally done, to provide some structure. Give us some rules. Let us know. It's funny, I had a couple of college basketball coaches. I've done some Big Ten games the last couple of weekends for NBC Peacock, and the coaches complain, we don't know what the rules are. Just tell us what the rules are. And my retort to them has been, it isn't what the rules are. It's who's going to tell you. That's the problem to me. We don't have anybody who's going to tell us what the rules are. There is no NCAA anymore. It's a joke. And basically the colleges are looking at Congress to say, help us. Congress is saying, we don't really give you the answer. You give us the answers and we'll approve it. We'll rubber stamp it. And then therefore who in college is going to provide the answers? To me, that where the root of this is, we need to know who is going to give us the rules.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because on a few different occasions over the past number of months, I've launched into some sort of diatribe and I've said, well, the power brokers and decision makers in college football need to do this or that or whatever. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I don't even know who I'm talking to at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Let me ask
you. You hit it. I mean,
yeah.
You hit it. And ultimately, something's going to have to emerge, whether it's an individual, a governing body, some wealthy, fabulous, super wealthy type that says, I'll come in and fund setting this up, or, in our present day, an executive order comes down saying this is what's going to happen. So it's going to take something like that somewhere in the next X years.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let me ask you about Fernando Mendoza. His second start of his college football career was here in Salt Lake when he was at Cal, and it was a good Utah team. That was a top 15 team at the time. And Utah smoked Cal, and I was there at the game, and I remember watching him and thinking, okay, there's some arm talent there, but, and again, he was a young player. It was his second start, and that was a good Utah team. But throughout the course of his tenure at Cal, I don't ever remember being, blown away. And now he's the best player in college football. Did you see this? I would imagine you called some of his games during the old Pac-12 days, yeah?
Yes, yep. At Cal, Spencer got to know him a little bit. He's a wonderful young man, as I think everyone saw, certainly in the Heisman Trophy speech and any interviews he did leading up to these playoffs. He actually worked a little bit. He kind of spent some time in our Pac-12 network studios. Yes, the last year that existed. He's a quality guy. As a football player, watching him this year, to me, there was some parallels to Bo Nix in that there's not an overwhelming trait that stands out other than the guy wins. And clearly you saw on the touchdown run last night, he's tough. And, there's a mixed bag with that because the toughness could put yourself in position that Bo Nix suffered on Sunday, right? Where now you're out in a championship game. That's the reason why people in the NFL spend tons of money on offensive linemen, because you got to have your quarterback play. And but I think Mendoza, and certainly the fact that Mark Davis and Tom Brady were there last night, tells you exactly what the Raiders are going to do with their number one pick. And that's going to be the best part of Mendoza. He's won. I will also admit that when it came even to Heisman Trophy voting this year, it was difficult for me from this standpoint. Fernando Mendoza, in November of 2024, starting for Cal, won the big game, the Cal-Stanford game, which in the Bay Area and for the two schools, that's the game. It's the Utah-BYU game. I mean, it's passionate. It's the one game in the Bay Area. It's the 1 week of the year where college football overrules the 49ers, is when Cal plays Stanford. Mendoza wins the game, does a teary interview on the field on TV, talking about how meaningful it was, how he loved this team, loved Cal, loved these guys. Cal gave him a chance, blah, blah, blah. 2 days later, Justin Wilcox, then the head coach, got a phone call saying Mendoza was going in the portal. They still had a game to play. Not a bowl game. They still had a regular season game to play. And it was clear that Cal was recruiting the kid that is their quarterback now, Saga Politele from Hawaii. Those close to Mendoza apparently were not pleased with that, were not pleased with the money. They were told there was going to be money for Mendoza, but he went in the portal. And so the bottom line, and I don't know how else to say, he quit. He quit on his team before the season ended, 3 days after this teary interview where he professed his love for his teammates. That's hard. I mean, that's really hard for me. And so even when it came to Heisman voting this year, it was hard. At the end of the day, his performance wins. And that's what you had to judge him on. And you saw it all the way through last night. But there is a little bit, to me, of a cloud over that because of the way, a quarterback is a leader. A quarterback just doesn't lead, and he left his team.
I had forgotten about that. I remember now that you brought it up, a few years. I had completely forgotten about that. So I don't know if the Notre Dame fan in you was watching Miami with any sort of emotion as a result of, the matchup earlier this year. Miami really the only team to shut down Jeremiah Love all season long. But they were a worthy opponent, Ted, last night. I think a lot of people were expecting Indiana to roll, but what's the Miami takeaway from this?
Yeah, Miami proved themselves. They're good. And, the Jeremiah Love thing, I'm not necessarily. The overall point to me was the Miami Notre Dame game. It was the first game of the year, and I don't put a whole lot of stock in that.
Yeah.
It's certainly not as much as other games. And in that game, you had Miami with a 24-year-old quarterback that they were paying $5 million a year to versus a young guy making his first ever college start. I mean, that was that game.
Yep.
And it came down to overtime. So for the powers to be that, dictated that being the be it all, they're all, that Miami's better than Notre Dame, I find that absurd. Miami won the game. Yeah. No question. And the rest of that to me is just a lot of lip flapping and rationalization. But to the point, Miami proved themselves. They're a good team, a really good team. They had 2 losses during the year that were hard to figure out, that weren't very good, but they're a good team. And I like Mario Cristobal. I got to know him a little bit when he was at Oregon, and I really like him. He's a good guy. I think the guy that everybody heard even after the game last night talking about his team was the Mario Cristobal that I saw behind the scenes a little bit during his years at Oregon. And what Oregon has done in the last few years, to me, it's very similar to Jim Harbaugh and David Shaw at Stanford. David Shaw took what Jim Harbaugh created, the foundation that Jim Harbaugh built, and then David Shaw built on it and bettered it, much to David's credit. But Jim Harbaugh built the foundation. Cristobal did the same thing at Oregon with linemen, and that's the point. Mario Cristobal was a lineman. He recruits linemen in an era when everybody gets fixated by passing and receivers running all over the place and Mike Leach's stuff. And Cristobal was the guy that said, no, we're going to go recruit linemen. And that's the Oregon success that Dan Lanning has built upon, to me, was started by Cristobal.
I think when we last had you on, the news had just broken that Notre Dame was opting out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And there's a local angle, of course, because Brigham Young would have been the opponent. Now that we've had a few weeks to kind of digest that, what do you make of your alma mater's decision to do that? And how do you respond to people that basically have called it like a cowardly move?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny you asked that question, Spence, because I've talked to, in my area, in my life, every Notre Dame alum I run into the last few weeks, I just take their temperature. Hey, what'd you guys think? How do you think? Some of my classmates who called me from other parts of the country, and even amongst, if you want to do an informal survey of 20 alums that I've talked to, it's pretty split on how they felt about it. I haven't changed my view. I personally think it was fine. The players didn't, the captains, the ones that didn't want to play. And that to me was absolutely fine. Why go and play in a game that means nothing if you can't represent your proper team? I've heard the feedback that while some kids, some seniors that aren't going to be in the NFL and some second team guys would have loved the chance to play. Sure. I get that. Totally understand that. The guys that carried you to that spot, the guys that got you that invitation were the ones who basically said, we're not going to play. That wins the day. The bowl systems outside of the CFP has proven it's just worthless to me. I don't know how else to say it. And I know that everybody who defends the bowl system, look at the viewership. It's Christmas time. People are all together in families. They'll watch. You put flag football on. You put UFC. You put anything on. The dog shows people will watch over the holidays. So I just don't buy that argument. Look, Notre Dame haters had their field day. Any Notre Dame person who's lived with this for their entire life, they get it. So, okay, Notre Dame haters had their run. That's fine. Marcus Freeman has handled it perfectly. I'm a tremendous fan of his. And I think what he said on ESPN's whatever show he was on the other day was perfect. He said the right thing. We can't leave any doubt. That's the way to deal with it. I do laugh at the Notre Dame haters who have talked about, Notre Dame doesn't want to join a conference because they get to keep all their money, which they did last year. Notre Dame kept all the money they earned by making the final. The flip side to that is, what did Notre Dame get this year by passing up their bowl invitation? 0. USC people like to beat their chest about Notre Dame. USC made money off all the other Big Ten teams being in bowl games, right?
Yeah.
USC gets a piece of that money. Notre Dame got 0 this year. That was their choice, and they'll live with it. But guess what? You know what Miami did last night? They kept every dollar. Miami kept every dollar. The ACC changed its rules last year because of the Florida State Clemson lawsuit. So Miami won and earned their way into the championship game, and whatever that check is going to be, they keep the whole thing. Nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to point at Notre Dame. And the point I come back is that's true. And Notre Dame's willing to accept the fact that this year, by their decision, they got 0. Okay. That was their call, and I'm fine with that.
Next year, the second shortest odds Notre Dame has, tied with Texas, to win the national championship. And I agree with you about Marcus Freeman. I mean, incredibly impressive. Rumors that he could potentially take an NFL job, but he's 10 toes down in Notre Dame. Confidence level next year for a team that a lot of people think is going to be right in the hunt for your Notre Dame fighting Irish.
Well, they've got the quarterback will have a year of experience under his belt now, which can't do anything but help. They're going to lose the running backs, which hurts. And Notre Dame, as the year went along, it hurt because they had lost offensive linemen during the season, which look, that's everybody's thing, but it particularly hurt Notre Dame, I think, this year. The other thing that I kind of don't understand so much is, and even some coaches that are clearly not deep thinkers will say, well, Notre Dame just should join a conference. And I keep saying, why? Why? Where is there? Is there a tablet that came down from the mount that says you now must join a conference? I mean, if you don't join a conference, you pay some prices for it, and Notre Dame is willing to pay some prices for it. Yes, they have influence enough in the playoff conversation to have the place. There's no question about that. If Notre Dame had no value, that wouldn't happen. Okay, I mean, the other schools are strong enough too that if Notre Dame didn't have any value to the playoff, no one would allow that to happen. But clearly that's the case. And again, Notre Dame's willing to accept, okay, scheduling's hard. Not everybody will work with us. USC just walked away. I mean, USC, contrary to what Lincoln Riley, who should really not talk about these things, contrary to what Lincoln Riley posited, USC wanted to play Notre Dame in Las Vegas next year, a neutral site game. I mean, that's so ludicrous that you say, okay, the Yankees and the Red Sox, pretty good rivalry, right?
Mm-hmm.
They play in Fenway Park and Yankee Stadium. They don't play in Houston or Pittsburgh. I mean, USC Notre Dame is a 100-year rivalry that gets played in the LA Coliseum and Notre Dame Stadium. That's where the games are played. There's not even a question about that. So if you don't want that, which USC didn't, okay, fine, just say it. But then to throw it back and say Notre Dame walked is nonsense. Anyway, that's the end of my Notre Dame conversation.
Well, almost, because we're lucky that game is going away because we get Notre Dame BYU twice, which should be fun.
That's right.
Yep.
And that's right. That's a nice thing. And I think they played in Vegas. Notre Dame played BYU in Vegas a few years back, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and the Notre Dame has the one neutral site game that they do control every year, and they move that around the country because, bluntly, to appease the alums. Notre Dame's a national school; they have alums everywhere. They want the alums to continue to contribute.
Yeah. All right, Ted, before I set you loose, when last we spoke, I believe Witt had just taken the Michigan job, and Morgan, of course, has now been officially introduced as the next head coach for the Utes. The transfer portal has come and gone, and Coach Witt took 7 coaches with him and 5 really good players, and that has not necessarily landed, with a bunch of measured reaction from the fan base around here. Now, we just saw Kirk Cignetti win a national championship. He took a grip of coaches with him from James Madison, a bunch of players as well. Utah football pillaged the New Mexico roster last year for their quarterback, running back, wide receiver, offensive coordinator. This is how the ecosystem of the sport works, but your reaction to a frustrated fan base watching their head coach walk away with a bunch of coaches and players, Ted, is what?
Yeah, understood. I mean, again, every fan base that has this happen to them is going to feel that way. I understand it. And having spent the last 2 years around Oregon State and Washington State, their feelings are 10x whatever the Ute fans are feeling. So, but I mean, I understand that. So there's no denying that's how you feel. I will say this. I obviously have not been around the Utes. I was thinking the last game I did was the spring game of 24. So it's a little over 18 months ago. But probably the last half a dozen times I had a chance to talk to Kyle Whittingham. He would, at some point in the conversation with both myself and Yogi, would drop it. Just remember, if you don't have NIL, you don't have anything.
Right.
And he was saying this, so I'm going back 2.5 years. If you don't have NIL, you don't have anything. So clearly, he used it to the best he could, as you just outlined, and now he's using it probably with more means at Michigan. And Morgan will turn around and probably do the same thing to help rebuild his roster. I don't know. Did the quarterback go with Kyle?
Nope, Devin stayed. Bryce Underwood decided to go back to Michigan, so we get Devin back for one more year, yeah.
That's right, because then Stanford just got the quarterback that Underwood replaced, who didn't play this past year. He just transferred into Stanford. I just heard that yesterday. But but again, this moment in college football, there is no continuity. It's year to year, and what Kyle gave you at Utah, likely, I hope for Morgan that he can do it. Odds probably not great to have that kind of a run. It just isn't going to happen anymore. And here's the other point that Cignetti has done at Indiana when we talk about changing the whole landscape. You are not going to play freshmen anymore. You're just not.
Right.
Look what Cignetti did. A whole team of 24-year-olds. It's men. And that, to me, is going to be the template that anybody that hopes to play in January is going to have to follow. If you want to play in January, you're going to have to play 24-year-olds. And I don't necessarily like saying that, but I think that's really that I don't see changing in the near future.
Ted, great stuff as always, my friend. I appreciate your time. I hope you're well, and we'd love to get you back soon, okay?
Same. Anytime, Spence, you know that. Thanks.
All right, the great Ted Robinson. He's been in our business, I think, 50-plus years. He's done everything: basketball, football, golf, tennis, baseball, Olympics. He was with the Pac-12 Network, and then Brett Yormark beheaded George Kliavkoff, and the Pac-12 died. It's kind of a morbid,
kind of
cliche catchphrase that I've been using quite a bit.
I mean,
I still miss it, man. I'm not going to lie.
And respect to our guy, George Kliavkoff.
I mean, I guess.
I'll also just add in Larry Scott.
Oh, for sure.
Because although he didn't, didn't walk the plank.
Yeah.
He wasn't publicly out there at the end.
Yeah.
My guy did not help.
No, Larry Scott begat George Kliavkoff.
Oof.
If we want to go biblical. There's no doubt about that. If there's one person to blame, and he's probably on his yacht somewhere because he took like $22 million on his way out the door.
Oh, yeah.
Goodness gracious. Let's start a football conference and blow it up and walk away with $22 million.
Or a league.
Let's do it. We're in. All right. Porter's favorite band, Five Finger Death Punch, is taking over the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on September the 22nd. Tune in to the OC show at 1:30 for your chance to win a pair of tickets to the event. More details on ESPN700sports.com. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go on this Tuesday afternoon. Your 3 o'clock hour starts next with the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. So keep it here on ESPN 700. Did you ever see American Pie? The old school, I don't know, teen rom-com back in the day? Did you ever see American Pie, that movie?
Yes. Is there multiple of them?
Yeah, there's like 7. But the original one, I think Oz joined an a cappella group to impress the girl, and this is the song they sang. So that's all I think about when I hear this song.
Fair enough. It's a good one.
I imagine Bill Riley likes to moonlight in an a cappella group from time to time. Riles, it's been a long time. And I know you have the pipes. I just picture you singing in some adult a cappella group at some point.
Well, I gave it some thought, Spence.
Okay.
I can't carry a tune, but yeah, it was the actor Chris Klein.
Yes, it was. Good pull.
He never had any kind. I think he was starting like the Rollerball reboot with maybe LL Cool J.
Why do you know that?
It's one of those things that I can't get out of my head. But that was such a cringe scene.
Yes, it was.
In America, in what was a really funny movie. That storyline was like one of my least favorite storylines in the movie. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It was. I mean, I don't know. There's got to be 4 or 5 other American Pie movies. I'm sure a lot of them were fine, but the original was like a very underrated generational comedy. But that certainly was the one spot that you're kind of like, wait, what exactly are we doing here?
And who's leaving the lacrosse state championship to run in and sing in the a cappella regionals, right?
And
wouldn't you lose all your friends? I mean, all your buddies that you've worked all. I'm going to leave the state championship game at halftime to go sing this a cappella song.
You would lose all your friends. And honestly, she was like a total pain. She wasn't fun. All she did was complain about him. Like she was nagging him. Like if you're going to leave the state championship group to go sing a cappella, you just need a better option. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you were leaving for Nadia, not the other girl.
Exactly. Right? Well said. Yeah, 100%. All right, Bill Riley, voice of the Utes. It's been a few weeks, my friend, but it's great to have you back on. I started the show off with this, then we just had Ted Robinson on. In our business, certainly when you do it, as long as we've done it, it's very rare that a game feels seismic. It's very rare that a moment feels something that we could look back on as a seminal moment that could change a lot of things as far as roster construction, the ecosystem of college football. But Indiana's national championship, Bill, feels that way to me. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know what the long-term ramifications are, Spence, but what it shows you is how you kind of have to operate in this new world that we live in. And I think Kirk Cignetti did a really good job of doing that when he moved from James Madison. Everybody kind of wanted to write it off as a one-year wonder a year ago, but he had his game plan. He brought his guys that were, 1AA caliber players at James Madison, and brought them with him. And he had the plan that he wanted, and then he kind of factored in some other transfers around it, plus the guys that were already there at the University of Indiana, and they bought in. And what he showed you was culture matters, coaching matters, and you don't have to have – I think probably there'll be more NFL guys probably off that Miami roster last night and some of the other teams they beat along the lines. That's not to say Indiana won't have some. I don't know that they were the most top-to-bottom roster talented team, but they played great individual or great team football. And then they had a transformative player at the quarterback spot and a great head coach. So I'm trying to think, and I'm old. You've said it many a times down through the years, and one of the advantages of being old is getting to see a lot of stuff. I just can't remember a college football story better than this. I know we all like to point at, say, Boise State when they beat Oklahoma, or Utah when they knocked off Bama, or Pitt in the Fiesta Bowl, some of those stories down through the years. But this is the losingest program in the history of college football. 2 years after a guy takes over, winning a national championship and beating blue blood after blue blood, power program after power program to do it. I don't know if they're the greatest team in the history of college football. LSU from 2019, some of those Miami teams might have an argument, but I don't know that there's a better story in the history, a single season story or a 2-year story than what Indiana is.
Yeah, they were 100-1 to win it. That's the shortest odds of all time. Second was Auburn, but they had Cam Newton and, 2010. The last time we had a first-time national champ was 96. I have a piece in front of me that calls this the most surprising national champ since 1984, when a team named BYU won the national championship. And, ultimately, when you look at how Kirk Cignetti went about this, Riles, he utilized a roster with 8 blue chip recruits, and then the majority of them not being highly recruited, and developed them over the course of 2 years. And I was listening to Urban on his podcast this morning, and he actually brought up Utah football as, of course, under Witt, now under Morgan Scalley, as the program that reminds him most of what Indiana just did, because of Utah's ability to grab some under-recruited kids and develop them moving forward. If we bring this to a local angle, are there things that we can take away from what Cignetti just did over the past 2 years to apply them to what Morgan has now in front of him?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look at what Cignetti did. He brought in the right number. The guys that he brought from JMU, nobody was saying, oh, my gosh. You look at these guys. They were good 1AA. They were making that transition to 1A, but they were 1AA, borderline 1A players. But they can play. We've seen examples of that. He knew them. They knew what he wanted. What was the stat they kept talking about all last night through the game? And they didn't have a 5-star. They had like 2 4-stars and 1 5-star on the roster. Mm-hmm. Well, it just goes to show you it's about developing them once you get them in the program. And to Urban's point, I think Utah does that very, very well. And I think I think Morgan's going to have to continue to do that, because let's be fair about this. Utah's not going to play necessarily in the same pool as a Texas Tech or an Ohio State, probably financially. I hope I'm wrong. I hope somebody comes along and does that. But you don't need to do it. Indiana proved that. Now, maybe they'll have more money coming in here now that they win a national championship. But what you have to be able to do is identify talent. And then once you get some of that talent in there, bring it to what you do, and then take it up a notch. And I think Morgan's been part of that at Utah as both a player and a coach. And I think I think that's a blueprint for doing it. Does that mean you're going to win a national championship? No, but it does mean you can be in competition for the playoff and getting into that tournament and go from there.
Since I haven't spoken to you since the presser that officially announced Morgan's arrival, I mean, obviously he coached the Vegas Bowl and he had done media before. But after they asked me to MC it and I said no, they landed on you. So I was glad that you had the opportunity to do that. Just kidding. But, we were back here at the studio listening to it live. I was watching on YouTube and we replayed it. Just since you were there, from my perspective, I don't know that could have gone better for Morgan specifically. And, certainly you and I have interviewed him a bunch over the years and we've known him over the years. So that's exactly who he is. But that was kind of like Morgan announcing his arrival and then just being his absolutely authentic self to the masses as far as people that didn't know him. What was the vibe like up there and how do you think it went?
Well, I said to somebody after it ended, I said, I don't know that he could have carried that out any better. I've known Morgan for 20 years. You've known him for 20 years. We know, but I think fans or people got their first long-form look at who Morgan Scalley is. They've seen clips and short interviews with him as a player, as a coach, as a coordinator, but never anything in that vein where it was just him kind of freestyling up there without a prepared speech, being who he is authentically and really projecting what it means to him to be the head coach, but also what his plans are as head coach at Utah. And to what you said and I said, and I think a lot of other people would agree, it knocked it out of the ballpark. And that's what I think he hit all the right notes in that. He didn't oversell it. He didn't get up promising a national. He said we can play. Our goal is to play for a national championship, but he didn't say we're going to bring one home next year. But I thought he hit all the right tones with that press conference. And I like, and I'm sure we'll talk about the staff that he's put together too. I like, because anybody that knows Morgan, and I've said this repeatedly, knows he's a very prepared individual. And the fact that he was coaching waiting for a couple of years means he was planning. He didn't just put the plan together in December when Witt stepped aside. He probably had a plan in place, probably tweaked it a little bit, but over the years, but he was prepared for the moment. And time will tell. We'll see what happens moving forward here because it's sports and you never know. But I'm not sure Utah could have hit that note better. Morgan could have hit it better, and I think he's well prepared to now assume the reins of the program.
Couple things based off of this dynamic. To your point, during the Vegas Bowl and afterwards, Morgan said, if you don't think we have a plan, then you don't know us. Now, he obviously had to adjust the plan, and I'm sure when he got the alert on his phone and said Kyle took what job, he was probably preparing to lose some of the coaches, and we know all the names that have followed Witt Ann Arbor. But I actually, and look, I'm not trying to gloss over the fact that it's tough to lose an entire staff and 5 players that you thought were going to, be good for you next year. But I was told that there was a part of Morgan that was probably going to look to bring in some of his own guys, regardless of what happened. And he was kind of looking at this as a chance to rebuild the staff in the way he wanted to rebuild it. And with how quickly he did it, Bill, it's clear that this was not something he had just thought about over the course of the past week and a half. I mean, look, I'm sure he would have loved to have a Jim Harding. I'm sure he would have loved to have a lot of the guys that left to stay. But the fact that he acted with so much efficiency and so quickly did indicate that he was prepared for whatever this moment, mandated from him.
Yeah, there's no doubt he was going to make some changes because every coach does. You want to bring in some guys that fit exactly what you wanted to do. Had he done it, there was going to be nothing personal about it. It's just you're building your staff to fit what you want. So I don't know who he would have kept had everybody been available. But you're right, Spence. He was going to bring in some of his guys. As it turned out, a number of guys went with Kyle to Michigan, so that allowed Morgan to bring some of those guys in, and I like what he did. I mean, bringing a guy like Jordan Gross in. I mean, Jim Harding was a fantastic offensive line coach, but now you brought a guy in that was a 12-year NFL star. He was an All-Pro. He was one of the headiest players in Utah football history. He's been coaching high school football, so he's been in the coaching ranks, not at the collegiate level. But to think that Jordan Gross doesn't know offensive line would be insane. So to bring somebody like that with ties to the program back, to elevate a guy like Colton Swan, who was a coordinator at Weber State. He's been on the staff. He's been coaching this defense. I like a lot of what he did. And to your point, there was it didn't drag on for weeks and weeks and weeks. He got his staff in place within about a week to 10 days, and they rolled from there, and I like what he did.
So, we were all kind of glued to the news cycle as it became pretty clear that Kyle was going to grab some former Ute players and only one former BYU player, and I know a lot of fans were frustrated and upset, and understandably so. I mean, look, this is how it works, okay? We just saw a national championship won by a coach who had his, guys with him, follow him from JMU, players and coaches. Utah football went to New Mexico, grabbed their quarterback, their offensive coordinator, their running back, their wide receiver. This is the ecosystem. So, there's a way to hope that Kyle is happy and does well and appreciate the 21 years that he spent here, and also be a little bit frustrated that you're losing coaches and players, but at the same time understanding this is the game and you just got to simply move on. And so a lot of people were hoping for some good news and got it in the form of Devin Dampier announcing that he is coming back. Now, over the course of, about 4 to 5 weeks, there were rumors here. Okay, I think he's coming back. Somebody actually told me about a month ago he'd actually signed. And Devin clearly was just waiting to announce it on his socials. It was very Gordon Hayward writing a love letter to his college coach and releasing that on the Player Tribune instead of just saying he's going to Boston. But, when Kevin McGivern was hired and Morgan moved quickly to hire Kevin, a lot of people surmised this was a bit of a love letter to Devin because he runs schematically a similar offense that Jason runs. Of course, they're different guys, but your thoughts on all those dynamics that, of course, has landed with Devin Dampier coming back to Utah for one more year?
Well, to back to the original point you made, you and I both watched The Godfather and The Godfather 2, fantastic movies. One of my favorite lines in Godfather 2, Hiram Roth turns to Michael Corleone and said, "I wasn't angry. It was business, and this is the business that we have chosen." Yep. It's true. This is the business of college athletics now. Kyle Whittingham didn't take a bunch of guys that were backups to me. He took good football players. Those kids made the decision to go, and that was their decision because that's where college athletics are. But Morgan went into the portal and grabbed some good players himself and replenished the coffers. And that's just the way collegiate athletics works until there's more, guidance or guardrails or whatever you have. But I like the way that they backfilled with what they did, grabbing some weapons. But to your point, Devin Dampier, that's the biggest news of the offseason, aside from, Morgan being named head coach. Bringing back your franchise quarterback, and let's call him that. He's the franchise quarterback coming off Big 12 newcomer of the year, third team all Big 12 season, where a year ago at this time, we were all kind of excited, but we didn't really know what Jason Beck would be, and we really didn't know what Devin Dampier would be. Yeah, you put up great numbers at New Mexico, but will that translate to the Power 4 level? Well, I think what we found out was it translated to the Power 4 level. Touchdown pass numbers up, touchdown rushing numbers up, and, of course, interceptions down. Backing up to that, though, the second bit of good news is Bird Ficklen's back, too. I'm not sure a lot of people we've talked enough about that Bird's return to be in the quarterback room with Devin. I'm not sure there's going to be many programs in the country, Spence, that have a better 1-2 starter / backup / insurance plan than what Utah has. Hey, we all hope Devin plays all 12, 13, 14, 15 games next year and doesn't get hurt. But the reality is football is tough, and recent Utah football history will tell you better have somebody ready to go. And now Utah does, and they know what he can do. Bird Ficklen showed that he's a pretty darn good quarterback in his own right. So I think both those things, and once you had those guys cemented, I think it really allowed you to build around those guys. And I think they've done a pretty good job in the transfer portal of building around those guys.
So let's get into what you've learned about Kevin McGivern and the new offensive coordinator and what you think this offense is going to look like. We love Bryson Barnes, our guy, the pig farmer. And, I'm not saying this in any disparaging way. Devin is just a more dynamic athlete than Bryson Barnes is. But Bryson had a really good year under Kevin McGivern last year, second team All-Mountain West. And Kevin, he's been around the block. He's been coaching for 20-plus years, 17 seasons as a coordinator in NCAA Division I football, mentoring quarterbacks. That's kind of his reputation. And, he was able to grab the Brandon Pegan kid, who was a first-team All-Mountain West wide receiver. And, they have some very intriguing skill position players as Wayshawn is coming back. The big question is the O-line, because it was just so dominant a year ago. But what have you learned about Kevin? What do you think Utah's offense is going to look like next year?
I talked to a guy named Kevin White, who's the color analyst for Utah State. Kevin is a great guy and got kind of a front row seat last year. Kevin was on my podcast a couple of weeks ago and basically told me Kevin McGivern is a great fit. He said he can do in a lot of ways. He thought, because he saw Jason Beck the year before at New Mexico, he thinks McGivern is a lot like Beck in that he is very adaptable to his personnel. He will play to the strengths of what he has. And he said basically what you said, hey, Bryson Barnes is a tough, gutty, gritty competitor. He, in essence, turned him in a lot of ways to an all-conference caliber quarterback. He was sacked something like 40 times this year. Their offensive line was not good at Utah State. Yet Bryson Barnes was still named the second-team all-conference quarterback with not as good a personnel around him as what McGivern will have at Utah with him. So I think Kevin is going to be very adaptable, and he will play to the strengths of both Devin Dampier and the personnel that he has. But to your point, yeah, you've got 5 guys on the offensive line that played together a bunch for the last 2 years, 2 guys that are going to be first-round draft picks. That's probably the biggest question. But, Jordan Gross brings with him from Fruitland, Idaho, a 5-star offensive lineman by the name of Kelvin Obot. And this young man's probably going to be slotted into one of the tackle spots next year. And then you've added a kid that was a starter on the national championship Montana State team at one tackle spot, and then you've got some other guys that have been backups but have gotten good playing time in the program. So I think the offensive line, I don't have any real worry that it's going to fall off the face of the earth or anything like that. Will it be as good right away as last year's offensive line? Well, I think sitting here today in mid-January and saying that would be crazy talk since you've got 2 first-round tackles. But I think between Jordan Gross's experience and the depth they already had in the program, and they really didn't lose much, if anything, I think, in the portal offensive lineman-wise, I think their offensive line will be fine, but it's going to be, I think, a work in progress, certainly this spring, figuring out where those pieces fit. And it might even be into fall camp trying to figure out everything you have there.
Yeah, and, because we started the conversation talking about Indiana's unlikely run to the national championship, and I do want to talk basketball because obviously, there's a game tonight, and we got our first Big 12 win with Al. But before we get over there, rankings are just rankings, and if you have been a part of the Utah football ecosystem for basically 20, 30 years, the exercise is this. You look at the rankings, and you say, well, we know they don't really matter because more often than not, this program is built upon the backs of kids that weren't highly recruited and developed. Now, it's a different era where, there's a little bit more of a prescient nature with the transfer portal. You can rebuild within a year, but unfortunately, you can also be taken from within a year. Utah's transfer portal rankings, according to On3, they're at 69. Okay, so they bring 12 in. They lose 18. So the rankings, as far as people that do this for a living, aren't great for the Utes. So with that in mind and everything we have coming back, before we get to basketball, I've been asking all my guests this. What does success for Morgan look like next year? Year one, Big 12 football, Morgan Scalley. What does success look like?
I think it's competing for a Big 12 championship, Spence. I do. You've got a franchise quarterback back. You've got maybe better skill around him this year. And I think the Utah defense, we see this every year, whether it's the NFL draft or the transfer portal now, there's always good depth on the defensive side. So everybody's way too early top 25s came out today. Mandel did one for the Athletic. Schleybaugh did one for ESPN. Utah was in both of those. Yeah, they were down in the 20s, but to me that says something about, where this program is. And they're coming off an 11-2 year, bringing back the quarterback and some good skill around him. So to me, right now, I think you compete for a Big 12 championship, and I think that should always be the expectation, but especially this year with what you've got coming back and returning.
All right, moving over to the basketball side of things, and before we get to tonight, we need to talk about the first Big 12 win for Al against TCU. TCU's not a bad team. They went down to Provo, and they threw some punches there and lost a close one to BYU. It's just such a bear of a conference. Bill Self, who, of course, coaches your alma mater, had some really interesting comments about the nature of playing Big 12 basketball this year. I think I'm ready to say it's the best basketball conference in America this year. It was the SEC last year. And look, we'll see kind of how it plays out. But, take us inside that TCU win. And then prior to that game, even though there were 5 straight L's to start conference play, did you sense that at least this team was making some progress in the right direction?
Yeah, they are. They're making progress for sure. Getting that win against TCU was good. TCU is a good basketball team. Are they one of the best 4 or 5 in the league? They are not. They're a middle-of-the-pack team, but Utah needed to find that W. They had lost 5 straight games, and they needed to kind of get over that hump and figure out how to do it, and they did on Saturday against TCU. Utah's guard play is really good. Terrence Brown, Don McHenry are really good. Keller Dawes had a really nice game, too. I think what Alex would like to see is a little bit more on the defensive end. The rebounding has gotten better. It was against TCU. There's going to be some nights in the Big 12 where it's just tough. But they've rebounded the basketball better. If they can get a little bit better on the defensive end, I think this team's going to find some more wins in the Big 12 this year and maybe surprise some people. But to your point, at the top, Spence, this is a ridiculously good conference. I mean, we saw Arizona, and I'm not sure there's a better team in college basketball right now than Arizona. I don't know that Tommy Lloyd's team has a weakness. I watched Houston the other day. They're ranked, I think, 6th right now. They're 17-1. They outscored Arizona State to begin the game 30-3, and they've got 3 guards that are off the charts good, and they just guard the heck out of you. Iowa State's still good. I saw Texas Tech on the road at Lubbock last week. They're really good. They hit BYU with like a 21-3 run at the end of the game the other night. We know BYU is good. So I would agree with you at the top for sure, and probably 6 or I don't know if anybody's got a top 6 or 7 in the country like the Big 12 does this year. But to Utah and to your point, they're getting better. They are. You can see that Alex and he and his staff are just coaching the heck out of these guys, and you're seeing that incremental progress. Is it coming as fast as he would like? Probably not, because Al, he's a guy he's a guy that's kind of old school and demands some, I won't say perfection, but demands results. But they're getting there slowly but surely.
So, BYU game, because I heard Al after the Arizona game, he said, I went into the locker room and said to the guys, hey, we were pretty close. And I'm like, love you, bud, but no. But the BYU game was winnable. They missed a bunch of wide open threes. They allowed way too many offensive boards. There were some lucky bounces that went BYU's way, but a lot of wide open shots. I thought schematically the game plan was sound. They gapped and blitzed AJ and made him get other players involved. By the way, I do think the Rob Wright kid is who makes BYU go. Of course, AJ is awesome. He's going to be a great pro. But that game to me was a game that they could have got. Now, Utah has had a lot of success against BYU in basketball in Salt Lake. I think maybe people forget that. So BYU comes away with a win. But I'll tell you what, in 5 minutes, Bill, the Lucas Langarita kid has something. You could tell right away, he knocks down the three. He's making some excellent reads and some bounce passes. It's like, okay, I actually anticipated that he would be starting and playing, 30 minutes pretty quickly. Sean Mooney joined us this last week, and unfortunately, he's on the shelf. He picked up an injury. But give me your thoughts on what he could be based off of what you know about him.
Spence, he had one practice and one shoot around after he got off the plane from Spain, and had 3 points and 2 assists in 5 minutes. Those 2 cross-court whip passes were amazing. He's got a really good feel for the game. He's going to help Utah when he gets back out on the floor. I don't know when that will be exactly. He'll play again this year at some point in time, but he is a really good player, and he is the type of player that if you can get him out there with Brown and McHenry, if you've got 3 guys that can score it and play at that level, you become really difficult to stop. So I'm like you. I didn't think he was going to play against BYU. Then I talked to one of the assistant coaches in the pregame. He was warming up, and I'm like, is he going to play? They're like, we'll see. And then at the first media timeout, he's in the game. And he knocks down a 3 2 minutes in. I'm like, okay, here we go. Unfortunately, suffered a little bit of an injury, but I like what he brings, and I hope we can see a lot more of him later this year.
Before we get to tonight, and Sean, it was a good hit with Sean because I actually was unaware of how many pieces were missing with this team. Can you give us an update? And are any of the missing players due to injury getting close to getting back?
Well, Langarita will not be back tonight, and Jake Patrick didn't travel with the team. So those 2 guys remain out. Everybody else is still available. Everybody saw the news that Chapa Moore left for family issues, and Ja'Kai Howard also left for family issues. So they are a little thin. If they had Langarita and Patrick, that would certainly help. Both those guys could space the floor. And I know, they didn't give me any timetable on their return, but if those 2 guys can get back sooner rather than later, it gives Utah such a different dynamic, especially on the offensive end, because those are 2 guys that are elite shooters.
All right, before I say you lose, K-State is the opponent tonight. K-State has not won a Big 12 game just yet. They're guard heavy. They like to get it out. They like to play with pace and space like everybody does these days and shoot a ton of threes. Their top 4 leading.
He went for 37 earlier this year against Mississippi State. He had 42, I think, last year against Wichita State. He can score at a high level, but they've got one of the best shooters in college basketball, too, Abdi Bashir Jr., who leads the NCAA in 3-pointers made per game. So they are guard heavy. Utah's guard heavy. Neither one of these teams has a lot of height. So I'm going to guess that the tempo is pretty high tonight. Might be the first team to 80 wins or 75 wins the game. But to your point, this is a winnable game for Utah. K-State's lost 5 in a row. They don't have a Big 12 win right now. And it's interesting, Spence, they've got a lot of talent on the roster, but they're not quite fitting together right now. So hopefully they don't figure out how to fit together tonight, and Utah can walk out of Manhattan with back-to-back wins.
Can I get a guarantee?
There'll be no guarantees.
I'd like a guarantee.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. No guarantees.
All right, fair enough. Riles, thanks for the time, man. Safe travels, okay?
Talk to you soon, Spence.
All right, Bill Riley, voice of the Utes. Hopefully Utah Hoops can get a win tonight, their second straight Big 12 win. It is K-State. Tip-off will be at 7 o'clock. Kansas State has not won a Big 12 game. Utah's coming off their first Big 12 win of the season. Our pregame coverage will begin about 6:30. If you want to watch it, it's on CBS Sports Network. But, of course, you can hear it right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. Going to bring in Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll check in with our friends down south with Spencer Linton from BYU TV. Then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Tuesday afternoon. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. I'm going to bring in Dave Bartu today, College Football Matrix. I just noticed Dave sent me a direct message on social media. It's about C.J. Stroud. I'll have to click on that later. You never know with Dave, our guy. He's going to roll in. We'll talk some college football. Spencer Linton, our buddy from BYU TV, will join us. Don't forget Utah men's basketball on your radio and television tonight. Utah looking for their second straight Big 12 win. The Jazz are in action, kind of. It's the Minnesota Timberwolves. No Larry Markkinen, whatever. So some basketball tonight. Utah State looking to bounce back. They welcome in UNLV. Utah basketball will be on the road taking on Brigham Young coming up Saturday. So that's a 3:30 Mountain Time start. And, of course, a lot of attention on the NFL Conference Championships games coming up on Sunday. We'll do some NFL a little bit later on. All right, Porter, we just had Bill on. If you missed Bill, voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, is on the road with Utah basketball, but we talked a lot about this Utah football transfer portal situation. And we will bring this back around to the way we started the show. Had a good conversation with Ted Robinson about Indiana and what feels like a very notable win for the landscape of college football. And Utah football, certainly under Kyle Whittingham for 21 years. And Urban Meyer, I was listening to Urban earlier today, he actually drew a parallel between what Kirk Cignetti has done over the past couple of years, building Indiana football up, with the majority of players that weren't highly recruited, 4 or 5-star players. Indiana just beat 4 straight teams that had 40 or more players that were 4 stars or above. And Indiana has what's classified as 8 blue-chip recruits. And Fernando Mendoza wasn't even one of them, and he just won the Heisman Trophy. Do you see any parallels as far as the development with Indiana football and, what Utah football has kind of built? When it comes to something as successful as this, I always try to bring it back around as if, can we draw any parallels? Can we learn anything with what Indiana football just did and relate it to what Utah football is trying to do?
You can. Kurt Cignetti obviously did it in kind of a flash, right? Came from JMU, which as a Virginia Tech fan, I'm all familiar with what he was doing there. And, when he got to Indiana, it seemed like he already had a good core of players that he liked and he was developing. And then when he did get to Indiana, he got what is Big Ten money, and Indiana has more resources there than really outside of Michigan, Ohio State, the others. Indiana has a lot, right? Now, they're not known for winning national championships. They're not known for winning football games. But that Big Ten money is it's an equalizer. And he went out and got, you mentioned 8 guys that are blue-chip recruits. Well, Utah's never had 8 guys that are blue-chip recruits in the same year. So, yes, there are some parallels when you look at what Utah has done, bringing in Big Sky guys and G5 talent, 0-star recruits like Eric Weddle, right? Doing less with more, or doing more with less, rather, is something that Utah has really been able to put their stamp on things with. So you can at least draw parallels, but there's still a dynamic in college football where, the Big Ten and the SEC, really the Big Ten at this moment, reigns supreme. And part of that is because of the pocketbook. And Kurt Cignetti will tell you himself that was a big part of getting over the hump. He wasn't going to win, respectfully, a national title with just transferring his guys from James Madison to Indiana. He had to pair that with what were really, really premier transfer portal targets. And that's something that Utah can at least look at. And when you're blending a roster, you look at what Kurt Cignetti did, identifying talent, identifying skill sets that worked within his system, did it as well as really anyone I have any memory of. You can draw some parallels and hope that Morgan Scalley has that type of talent acquisition, talent evaluation, and the ability to bring it all together, right? Morgan has built his, now his empire, we can call it that now, it's his, off of doing exactly that, right? You think of guys like Terrell Burgess, Julian Blackmon, players that weren't heralded recruits and that weren't necessarily, as you said, blue chip guys, and then turning them into legitimate NFL players. That's something that you can definitely look at and have some hope behind. But it is still a little different when you get that Big Ten support, you get that Big Ten bubble, and that's something that Utah still doesn't have. Although I do believe the playing field has been leveled somewhat.
It has. Here's where I see the issue, though, because I said this earlier. The irony in the way this sport has been talked about over the past 5 years, and we're certainly guilty of this as well. And let me be clear, we talk about it because I think there are legitimate gripes and issues with the way the sport has changed, right? Now, the irony in complaining about NIL, which I never have, by the way, because I've always been a pay the play. I've been doing this 20 plus years. I've said for 20 plus years, you need to pay your players. Okay. Now it's easy to say that. It's another thing to make sure it's executed properly. So there is some sort of system in place. The secret is a lot of programs have been paying players in one way, shape, or form for a number of years. It just has been below board and behind the scenes. I mean, I can tell you stories that have actually happened here. I can tell you stories of teammates I had in AAU that went on to play big-time college basketball. Like, money has exchanged hands. It's just never been allowed the way it is now. And, of course, the transfer portal, there's no sport in the world that has free agency every year. It's lunacy that it's part of the ecosystem of college football now. But the reality is it actually has improved the on-field product, as we talked to Ted Robinson earlier. Now, if you're a fan of the changes to the sport, it probably means you're a fan of a school that's benefited from the changes. And I think it's fair to ask, has Utah football benefited from the changes? Will Utah football be able to benefit from the changes? Because the reality is, for all the conversation, and Kirk Cignetti, this has been a masterclass. What he did at Indiana in 2 years has been a masterclass. But Indiana also has a massive alumni base and donors and boosters and, an endowment that allows them to compete now with the highest levels of the biggest spenders in college football. The reality is Texas Tech has that. They're the number one rated transfer class again in the Big 12, and it's not even close. The reality is BYU has that. Okay, they're paying for talent in basketball and football. And we're seeing the fruits of that, winning basketball games, being ranked very highly, and for 2 straight years now being in the mix to win a Big 12 championship at the end of the season. Utah football last year showed another proof of concept where they won 11 football games. The final AP poll came out today. They're a top 15 team. It's not like the sky is falling, but it's fair to question whether or not, now that the landscape has changed, and now that a program like Indiana, to Porter's point, can utilize the Big Ten TV money and an alumni base that will write checks, namely Mark Cuban. Watch what Oregon's doing, by the way. Urban talked about this earlier today. Oregon is following the Indiana blueprint. Okay, they're bringing in highly rated and ranked transfer players that are 22, 23, and sometimes 24 years old. Like, this is not a sport. The Kadarius Toney kid, that awesome wide receiver from Miami, just turned 18. Bryce Underwood, Witt's quarterback at Michigan, is a young player. The days of this sport basically coming down to the way 18 and 19-year-olds are going to produce, they're dwindling. Okay, they're starting to go away. And when you look at the best programs in the country right now, the majority of them are built on players that have played 3, 4, sometimes 5 years of college football already. It's a new way to approach this. And what sort of lessons do you learn if you're Morgan Scalley? Do you have the bank account? Do you have the NIL resources to go to a Brendan Sorsby, who's going to be at Texas Tech, or a Josh Hoover, who's going to be at Indiana, and say, look, we've been watching you for 3, 4 years. You're 22, 23. We know you can do this. I mean, Indiana's roster is littered with players that have 3, 4 years of college football experience for the most part. this is the way to do it now. You don't have to rely on going to sit down with a 17-year-old and hoping he can step in and play big-time minutes right away. You no longer have to do that. In fact, I think it's going to become very, very rare, and this is where the game gets really interesting. Like if there's a really talented 18-year-old player, and he's looking at, well, let's just say Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, but the reality is there's no playing time for him as an 18-year-old. Can a school like Utah out of the Big 12, who, if we just have to be honest, is not on an even playing field with the Big 10 or the SEC, and that comes down to money and resources, can you capture the attention of an 18-year-old and say, look, you will play right away? That was the message. Ben Moa, Celesi's dad, Ute legend, joined Sean's show the day that it was announced that Celesi had decommitted from Tennessee to go to Utah, and basically outlined the plan was that for Celesi to be kind of like the new Smith Snowden, play on both sides of the ball, get playing time right away, right? Now, of course, Celesi has joined Smith Snowden in Ann Arbor, but that's a angle that you can take. If you're Utah, can you promise more playing time to a younger player who's not going to see the field for some of these programs that are now leaning into what I will call the Indiana model? Grown-ups, guys that their peers sometimes are playing in the NFL. 22, 23, 24. Indiana has a player that's about to turn 25. Now, BYU has always done that, right? It's one of these things that people discuss when it comes to Brigham Young that's a little bit of a hot-button topic. It depends on what side you fall on, but the missionary program has bred a lot of return missionaries that come back and play football for BYU and sometimes graduate when they're 26, 27 years old. Who was that basketball player that just left a year ago who was 30? Oh, the Trevin Knell kid. Yeah, Trevin Knell played basketball at BYU for 8 years. This is not a new dynamic for Brigham Young, but it's a new dynamic for some of the other programs to now have the ability via the transfer portal. And, you can transfer as a grad transfer. So you finish your undergrad, you still have some eligibility left. These guys are playing 4, 5, 6 years of college football. And it's something BYU has always been able to do, even the playing field, because they had older, bigger men playing against 18, 19-year-old kids at times. And now that's a dynamic that every program can use at their disposal. I mean, the older you are, the more mature you are, your body matures, you have better habits. It's the way to do it now. And it wasn't really possible back in the day. The other piece of interesting data that came out this last off season, or I should say this last season, is in a roundabout way, this new college football ecosystem has led to higher graduation rates. And the reasoning is simple. I mean, some people graduate in 3 or 4 years, other people 6, 7 years. Tommy boy, they're called doctors for you Chris Farley fans out there. But the longer you stay in college, the more opportunity you have to graduate. So graduation rates are actually up 80% in college football because you don't run out of eligibility after 4 years anymore, 4 or 5 years if you redshirt. You can stick around, play more football, take more classes, and actually get your degree and find your community, which is a good thing. You need a backup plan. I know most of these young men think they're playing in the NFL, but if more college football actually leads to more graduation and more stability as it comes to your ability to be an earner economically, just in life outside of football, it's not a bad thing. It's kind of interesting to dissect because so many people yell about the transfer portal in NIL, and in a way, it's changed this sport for the better. And, of course, like I said, that depends on the program you cheer for and whether or not you think your athletic department, your institution, your football program is in a place to be able to capitalize on the ability to rebuild rosters now. All right. Before we catch a break, we're going to do more college football with our guy Dave Bartu coming up next. We'll check in down at BYU with Spencer Linton before we launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. But I do want to tell you about a client on the show that I know personally and I'm thrilled with because I've worked with them. So it's Game Day Men's Health. New year, new you, right? Did you set that resolution on January 1 to eat better, to work out, to improve habits, to get in better shape, to do all the things you need to do to either lose weight or if you want to gain some weight and go to the gym? Gains season, as the kids call them. How's that going? as we're about to launch into the final portion of this month. Well, the good news is it's not too late to kind of get back on track. And if you have not utilized this deal from Game Day Men's Health, I'll just tell you that as a result of working with them over the course of 2 years, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in as an adult. Okay. So started working out a couple years ago. I just set a goal. I'm going to do what I can to grind, do the gym thing, do the yoga thing, eat better, get in better shape. Started the process. Within about 3 months, I was frustrated because as you get older, it is harder to get in shape. Pretty simple. So I had a friend ask me, have you ever tried to supplement testosterone before? Which at the time I had not. And he said, go to Game Day Men's Health. Here's the deal. They're going to take your levels. They're going to take some blood. And then they're going to create, based off of your blood work, a plan moving forward for you. And I did that. And within 2 months after that, I had made more progress than I did in the 3 months prior. The good news is 2 years later, I've kept the weight off. I've stayed in shape. And I've stayed with them because they take your blood work on a consistent basis and they adjust what you need based off the data. So for me, it was peptides and it was also testosterone. They offer weight loss like semaglutide, tirzepatide, the things that you've heard about. Once upon a time, these products were simply for athletes, celebrities, actors, and rich people. That's not the deal anymore because it's a lot more affordable. Okay, so Game Day Men's Health, Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, South Ogden. Find the closest one near you and tell them I sent you. And when you tell them that I sent you, they're going to give you the consultation for free. It takes about 15 or 20 minutes. They're going to go over your blood work with you. But here's the kicker. If you mention you heard me talking about it, they're giving you 50% off your membership for the entire year. So do it now. Don't wait for a few months because take advantage of the 50% all year long. The longer you wait, the more money you're going to spend. 50% off your entire membership for 2026 if you mention that you heard me talking about it with our good friends at Game Day Men's Health. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Your 4 o'clock hour today is Dave Bartu and Spencer Linton. Busy Tuesday show. Good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Big night in local college basketball. Not a big night in pro basketball because it never is these days, but the Jazz technically are going to play a game against the Timberwolves without a bunch of players. Utah back in action, looking for their second straight Big 12 win. They're on the road against K-State. But let's talk more college football. Our buddy Dave Bartu, the College Football Matrix, on a Tuesday. What's up, Dave? How are you, man?
Dude, I am doing great. Just enjoying the single greatest coaching event in college football of my lifetime.
And that's exactly what I want to talk to you about today, because this is right in your wheelhouse. You hear a lot of things like this is historic, this has never been done before, but the Dave Bartu College Football Matrix take on what Kirk Cignetti has done sounds like what?
It's just ridiculous. I mean, if you and I sat down and you're like, hey, Dave, this is about to happen at a school. And look, it doesn't even have to be Indiana, which has lost more college football games than anybody. It could just be a mid-30s recruiter, which Indiana was coming into the season, right? It could be Utah, right? It could be Arizona State, North Carolina State. They are not only going to win a national title, but there's going to be a new playoff, and they are going to beat 4 straight top 10 recruiters to do it. No way. I would be penniless, homeless, helpless, and worthless. I would have pushed everything in on that. It's not only the greatest single season, it is, in our grading system, the greatest 2-year run ever. It is the greatest 3-year run ever. It is the greatest 4-year run ever with what he has done with that record, that performance, and that talent.
Are they built to last? I mean, they're going to lose their quarterback. They're going to lose the Heisman Trophy winner. They're going to lose a group of players. But if there's ever been proof of concept, this certainly is that. What's next for Indiana?
Oh, I have no idea. But I'll respond with a question though on that one. Who in this environment can be built to last?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? No, nobody can. I mean, that's why Nick Saban quit. Right? Because Nick said, I can't do what old Nick Saban used to be able to do. He literally quit on his old self because he couldn't reach that standard anymore. So nobody can do that, really, ever. The interesting thing, though, with Indiana, massive coaching carousel, right? I mean, huge. And everybody's been talking about how awesome and wonderful and great Kirk Cignetti is at coaching football and identifying football. And nobody went after his offensive defensive coordinator for a head coach position. But, oh, no, we'll go get Alex Golsh, who's had one good year of play calling, and let him be head of Auburn, but not the guy who has 4 straight top 10 offenses at Indiana or the guy with 2 straight top 5 defenses at Indiana. But the coaching continuity is my point, is they get everybody back. They get, obviously, Kurt's going to be back, but so is Bryant, so is Mike. Their special teams coordinator, who is number 5 in blocks and number 3 in net hidden yards this year, is going to be back. They're going to have to restart it, but they're restarting it with the best coaching staff profile in the Big Ten again. So do I expect the same results? Absolutely not. Do I expect them to fade into oblivion? No, I do not expect that either.
Do you view this story as something we'll look back on in 15, 20 years and say the sport changed that day? The sport changed as a result of what Kirk Cignetti did at Indiana?
Ooh, I don't know if the sport's going to change. I would like to think the hope and perception of what can be done will change. I think there's greater likelihood that we look back on his career and what happened and realize Kirk Cignetti and what he did, that was one of one. Right? Because look at all the other teams in the playoffs. Okay? Oregon, top 5 recruiter. Alabama, top 5 recruiter. Georgia, top 5 recruiter. Notre Dame got left out, top 10 recruiter. Miami, top 10 recruiter. You go through it, Ole Miss, top 15. The who's and the what's were all, the Jimmies and Joes were pretty much all still there. And then you have Indiana. So I think the likelihood to me is going to be down the road looking back is, oh my God, this guy is what just happened. We maybe underappreciated what we just saw because it's never happened. And I bet more on it never happening again, at least with anybody not named Kirk Cignetti.
We were trying to debate this a little bit earlier. The boxes that need to be checked to be a successful modern day college football team. What does that sound like, Dave? I mean, you got to get the coach right. You need a quarterback. You need NIL. We're trying to kind of figure out what sort of lessons we can learn from what just happened. You're running a college football program. What does your checklist look like to ensure that you're as successful as you can be?
Successful as you can be. Shoot. That's one of the things I'm actually working the numbers on right now is I'm trying to reverse engineer everything Cignetti's done from a player standpoint to figure out what he's doing. I do know at the national championship level, to get there, I still say you need recruiting and transfer portal more than anything. Even though Indiana just blew that up because up until this year, our last 26 national champions were all top 13 recruiters and transfer portal guys over the previous 4 years. So I still maintain talent's going to be important. But what has always been important is performance, offense and or defense. Every single team the last 27 years has finished the regular season. Okay, the regular season, they have finished in the top 3 of offense and or defensive scoring efficiency. Now, that's a pretty small number. I think you'd agree. Top 3, not top 5 or 10. Top 3. Indiana was number 2 in defense, number 3 in offense coming into the playoffs. They won it all. So that is a 27-year streak, and it basically tells me you have to be super elite or you're not going to get it done. In that vein, you have to have great coaching. Like you said, I've been building staffs for over a decade in college football and the NFL. That's my number one thing is coaching performance analytics. There has not been a single staff that has won a national title that started the season with less than a 3.5-star offensive coordinator and less than a 3.5-star defensive coordinator. So you've got to get the coaching right. That's only 30% of all the coordinators out there. So to me, you've got to have a ceiling of player performance and coaching performance that puts you at a chance of being at elite level. Because if you don't do that, nobody's won a national title in the last 27 years, regardless of talent, without elite performance.
And speaking of which, Fernando Mendoza had his second career college start here in Salt Lake City. He got his head kicked in. Throughout the course of his time at Cal, with our old Pac-12 days back in the day, you could tell that he had some arm talent. But, dude, I mean, come on. Like, what stands out most about what has been a very meteoric and historic rise for this year's Heisman Trophy winner?
Well, here's the thing, is that even though he was at Cal and it didn't look good, they still won more games above expectation. He still elevated the program. And he also put in a lot of snaps. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to be successful at the NFL level or not, but guys that are successful starting at the NFL level invariably carry two things: high quarterback effect, which means how much did you elevate the team beyond the talent and expectations. Obviously, he did it at Indiana, but he also did it pretty good at Cal. So his overall quarterback effect is significant. That is a check in his box. He didn't play for elite teams. Quarterbacks that come from elite teams don't make it in the NFL very much because I don't think they're ever tested. They don't have to carry the bags because they're surrounded with talent and snap count. Every once in a while you get that great player, your Cam Newton, your Peyton Manning, who don't have a big snap count, but Justin Herbert, that guy, he came back for one more year, stacked snaps, and he started carrying the team. I think that extra 4th, 5th year for guys is extremely important in their overall development to be successful at the NFL. And I think this is a series of progress based on the snap count and lessons learned instead of jumping into the NFL with quote-unquote body and arm potential. Those guys usually fail. Give me the guys that learn the craft the hard way at the college football level.
Maybe like a guy named Josh Hoover, who is going to take his 31 career starts to Bloomington. Let's see. He's nearly thrown for almost 10,000 yards. He's got 71 touchdowns, 33 picks. He does have double-digit picks over the past couple of years. Those are large shoes that Mendoza leaves behind, but Josh Hoover will be under center for Indiana. What does your data say about that?
Well, remember how I just said that Mendoza made Cal better than they were?
Yep.
he didn't make Texas Christian better than they were. That team underperformed. There was a lot of talent on that team, and they never – now, I don't know if it's a him thing or it's a Sonny Dykes thing, because Sonny isn't very good either. I know he caught lightning in a bottle, got lucky, made a national title, and that's one of my top 10s Dave will never figure out in the numbers in college football. But I'm interested to see what's happened. He wasn't that great, but he wasn't that bad. So I think you and I'd probably sit down and agree, probably closer to Mendoza than a guy that's lighting it up. But we'll see. I'm not too far over on my skis because I'm not sold he did a lot at TCU to elevate the win total. Maybe padded some stats, but didn't win a lot of football games.
We did get some good news around these parts, Dave, as Devin Dampier has announced he's going to run it back for one more year. Kevin McGivern's the offensive coordinator now, as Jason Beck lives in Ann Arbor. And I do want to talk Utah and Michigan coaches in the kind of spot we find themselves in a moment. But, Devin came to us from New Mexico a year ago with some questions about whether or not he could play P4 football. And he certainly did, leading the Big 12 in QBR. But, as far as what you know about his new offensive coordinator, I know they are anticipating a similar style. Kevin's going to run kind of a similar style that Jason ran. But what do you make of Devin Dampier back under center for Utah football next year?
Well, I love continuity. That's one of the things that I'm really trying to explore right now is trying to figure out roster and coaching continuity. Because look at our semifinal teams, all right? Miami, I helped build that entire staff. They really haven't had much turnover. They brought in Heatherman as a defensive coordinator, but Shannon's been there a while. The whole staff has been there a while. Dan Lanning had a lot of coaching continuity getting into the semifinals. The other side of it, Ole Miss had 5 years. I know Lane left, but he had 5 years of building culture, and he had a lot of continuity in that one as well. And obviously Indiana, nothing's changed. Those guys have been together for 4, 5, 6 years. So I look at coaching and player continuity as having a lot of value. So having a guy coming back, now he doesn't have his offensive coordinator, having him coming back is, I think, a big plus. Now, blending in what he can do with what McGivens has done as an offensive coordinator at Oregon State, at San Jose State, most recently Utah State, it'll be interesting. I don't have his numbers right in front of me. I can do that later for you. But we'll just see how that works out right now, even if it is a similar style.
Is it even possible for you to give us the Dave Bartu take on Utah's staff with Morgan Scalley in charge and Colton Swan elevated to D.C. and the aforementioned Kevin McGivern as the offensive coordinator? Or do you, I would imagine your numbers need, proof of concept and data, yeah?
A little bit. Now, your new defensive coordinator, is he calling the plays, or is Morgan still going to be in control of that?
It's a fair question. Colton called the second half of the Vegas Bowl, but look, Morgan was always heavily influenced by Kyle, and I would imagine Colton's going to be heavily influenced by Morgan.
Okay. Let's just say so. Morgan, though, part of the reason he was hired is he was a really good defensive coordinator, right? I mean, he has an elite ceiling, so I think we should expect the Utah defense to continue to be very, very good. The big question mark is going to be McGivern, and how is he going to? Now, I don't have his stuff right in front of me, but he's been an offensive coordinator long enough. Yeah, I can give my take on his floor and his ceiling. I just can't do it right now, so I apologize there. Special teams coordinator, is he coming back, or did you lose your special teams coordinator as well?
He'll be back. Are they going to give that to Sharif Porter? Is that going to be?
Sharif's been the coordinator.
Yeah, Sharif Shaw. He'll be back. Yeah, Sharif is back.
Okay. Okay. And I think that guy's pretty underrated. I like him, and I like the continuity that he's going to be able to stay. So, I think the biggest question mark is going to be McGivern and that offense. And I'll do that as part of my homework to get ready for that. Anybody else that you guys lost in the transition at all?
Oh, yeah. Jim Harding, offensive line coach. They lost, I think the total was 7 different coaches followed with Ann Arbor. I mean, and I do want to ask you about that staff in a moment, but it is more or less a new staff. Sharif Shaw, holdover, and then Morgan's had to kind of rebuild the whole thing from the ground up.
Okay, yeah, it seemed like to me watching it from afar. I don't get too much into it as it's going on because we wait till it's all done to recalibrate everything and regrade everything. So I did think there was a lot more turnover than I expected. And there was a couple of the hires. I know that in my mind, I was like, was he ready to lose that guy? Because that doesn't seem like a huge replacement. It seemed like a couple of more buddies or more stabs, but we'll take a look at it. I would say as a Utah fan, do not expect the first year to be that smooth relative to the performance you've gotten out of Utah the last 15 years, because redoing a whole staff that much is going to be bumpy.
Yeah, the final list was Jason Beck, offensive coordinator, Freddie Whittingham, tight ends coach, and obviously Kyle's brother, Micah Simon, wide receivers, Coy Detmer Jr., the quarterbacks coach, Jim Harding, O-line, as I referenced, then Lewis Powell, defensive line coach, who has a reputation of an incredible recruiter as well. Jay Hill leaves BYU. He lives in Ann Arbor now as well. So you referenced that Indiana will enter Big Ten play next year as your highest-rated coaching staff, and they deserve that based off of what they just did. But what do you make of the staff that Witt has compiled for Michigan?
Oh, pretty good. You know, getting the two line coaches is, to me, a pretty big deal. When my team and when we sit down and talk about staffing, I put a little bit more weight on the interior guys from a coaching standpoint. So that is a lot of continuity for Kyle to take with him to Ann Arbor. Obviously, I've talked about Kyle on this show, top 25 plus active head coach in college football. So I personally think Michigan upgraded in this process. I think Michigan has a better head coach, a better offensive coordinator now. When Beck was hired before, he was already on our board as a rising star. Nothing really to take him off the board on that so far. So I think that is a really good pull there. Then you look at the defensive coordinator, another really solid pull, rising star kind of guy. So I think that Michigan won huge in this. So I think they upgraded everything across the board: offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach. But with NIL, the portal, and so forth, we'll see how long it takes to assimilate everything in Ann Arbor. But from my standpoint, inside the numbers, Michigan won across the board in the replacement process for Sherrone Moore.
So BYU, again, they lost Jay Hill, but they retain Aaron Roderick, their offensive coordinator. They elevate Kelly Papinga to defensive coordinator. Kalani said no to Penn State, and he said yes to BYU. And they really, Dave, did not lose any transfers that's going to affect them in an adverse way. For the most part, they're able to bring everybody back. Bear Bachmeier, L.J. Martin, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. And they added some good pieces in the transfer portal. They're going to lose Chase Roberts. He graduated. The Jack Kelly kid graduated as well. But they return basically most everybody they wanted. The Satawala kid was offered a Michigan situation. He said no. So you like continuity. Kalani's back. A-Rod's back. They elevate Papinga to defensive coordinator, and they return to grip. I think BYU's got a shot to be pretty good next year. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, it's one of the – nobody really talked – it was funny talking about I'd hear a lot of the talking heads talking about Indiana's age and continuity and so forth. And I'm like, have you seen BYU?
Yep.
BYU has to be up there amongst top, 3 programs that can get and retain guys. I mean, you get them and they don't go. It kind of feels like old Stanford. It used to be when kids went to Stanford, they never left. It was just a great place, and they loved it there. And BYU, with everything that it's involved with and all the different things that the kids can plug into, correct me if I'm wrong, but they got to be, top 5, top 3 in being able to keep players year over year?
Something like it. And, the return missionary stuff has always allowed them to play, young men that are 23, 24, 25 sometimes. Like we're hearing a lot of conversation about college football programs who are building upon like grown-ups, 22 to 25-year-olds. BYU's always done that, Yeah,
but the thing is I think it's different bringing a guy in a portal that's older versus a guy who's come up through that process.
Yeah.
And see, over time, I mean, I'm sure you watched the national championship game last night, seeing like Ray Lewis and Michael Irvin on the sideline cheering, right? Guys who've been with Miami forever. For most programs, it's going to be gone in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. There's no alumni. There's nobody that stuck around. So at a program like BYU, as this goes forward, the more guys that you can keep and hold and actually have a real passionate alumni base, I think it just becomes stronger and just makes the program that much more viable. And even though you're not going to recruit in the top 25 and be up in that area, I think the strength, the age, the continuity, everything about BYU is starting to pay off. And I believe it's only going to get stronger as we go forward. Look at the last couple of years. I did not expect this at all, and I think there is huge benefit to the continuity that the program has had over the last couple of years playing a part in that.
The Big 12 team that kept both of our local teams out of the dance and has the number one ranked recruiting class again this year in the conference is Texas Tech. Brendan Sorsby will leave Cincinnati, and he'll be under center there. So just, from a Big 12 standpoint, whether you're BYU or Utah or anyone else, you're looking up at Texas Tech and that oil money provided by Cody Campbell. What do you make of the staff they have there, the team they're building, and what they could look like next season?
Oh, well, the staff they have there, played a part in that. And I said at the beginning of last year, January 2025, that this was the biggest upgrade combination in the Big 12 last year. So I really like that staff. I think they have two future stars in the making at the coordinator positions. So, and again, continuity. Nobody went after them. Not much. Some people went after them. They were on a couple lists and they got some interviews, but it wasn't places they wanted to go to. So Texas Tech returns that, which I think is great for them because they upgraded the offensive coordinator big time last year, and it really showed. Sorsby, we'll see. Again, a guy who really didn't elevate Cincinnati. I think, I know quarterbacking is becoming like the NFL. You overpay for these guys, but he did okay at Cincinnati with a good offensive coordinator. So we'll see where that goes. But as far as Texas Tech goes, I think the underrated part about it, everybody focuses on the oil money and the recruiting, but that offensive-defensive coordinator combination is one of the best in the Big 12 and one of the best in the country.
All right, Dave, before I set you loose, we've been debating this on the program, and your answer to this question as a fan is probably predicated on who you cheer for and whether or not you believe that the current state of college football has benefited your team. But when it comes to, transfer portal, NIL, the things that we've complained about for 4 or 5 years, is it fair to say that it actually has maybe improved the on-field product?
No.
No.
I think the on-field product sucks.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Comparatively.
Okay.
Now, that's different than leveling the playing field. Okay? There's two different things. Do I think this Indiana team beats a Ohio State, a LSU, an Alabama, a Georgia? No. Right? Do I think anybody in the SEC even holds a candle to past SEC champs? No, I think they get destroyed. So we don't have this congregation of talent. These elite teams, yes, Indiana is a fantastic story, wonderful national champion, okay? But in terms of overall play, is the play better? No, I'm seeing offensive efficiency drop. I see defensive efficiency drop. I see turnovers going up. I see sloppier play inside the numbers. But is it more competitive? Yes. That makes it more fun. We do have more games that are close. The game is dropped by about a drive per game. So we are, and the actual efficiency is down. So I think the product is more entertaining to watch because it's closer, but on paper it is a less efficient, poorer played product right now.
Huh. Interesting insight, Dave. Look, we'll set you loose to go elk hunting or take an edible or whatever you do on a random Tuesday afternoon. What are you doing today? I always like to ask you that question.
Actually, right now, I created my own AI agent to answer questions for fans. Mm-hmm. So if you go onto Twitter, if you go to Ask Matrix Edge AI, that is an AI agent that I've trained in NFL and college football data. And somebody asked it, about Saban. I guess yesterday he said something about his 5-star recruits at running back and NFL careers and how recruiting stars don't mean anything. Yeah, it's working on the last 20 years of stars and NFL starts to blow that up.
Wow. Well, Dave, never a dull moment, my friend. Appreciate your time.
No.
Be well, okay?
Take it easy, man. Thank you for having me on.
Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix, maybe the most interesting college football guest we have all season long. I want to remind you guys, you can experience the heart-pounding thrill of PBR, not the beer, that's professional bull riding, at the Delta Center coming up on February the 6th to the 7th. Tune in to the OC show at noon for your chance to win a pair of tickets to see our friends at the professional bull riding event at the Delta Center on February 6th through the 7th. All right, we will catch a quick break. Coming up next, we'll check in with our friends down south. We'll do some BYU and some Big 12 with Spencer Litton from BYU TV, and we'll get into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. Don't forget Utah men's hoops taking on Kansas State on the road, looking for their second straight Big 12 victory. 7 o'clock tonight on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, we'll check in with Bill. Bill Riley, voice of the Utes, says the Utah men's basketball team will try to get a win tonight against K-State on the road. Utah basketball able to get their first Big 12 win against TCU last weekend. So we'll join Bill coming up, give you a little preview. Our next guest, though, good enough to join us. We'll check in with our guys down south. Spencer Litton, BYU TV on a Tuesday. Hello, young man. How are you?
Doing well, Spence. How goes it up north, my friend?
All good up here, man. All good up here. And I just want to get your thoughts on, in this business, as you know, it's rare that a game or a moment feels seismic and feels like it could be something that really changes things. And in a vacuum, Indiana's win last night obviously brings them a national championship. But as you pan out over the course of 30,000 feet now to hone in on this project 2 years now with Kirk Cignetti bringing them to the highest level of college football, it feels like a new blueprint has kind of manifested itself. What do you think?
Yes, and it gives hope to everybody else. Like, I know Indiana is uber talented and experienced and got the right coach and the right culture and accountability and have the Big Ten TV contract and an amazing alumni base and NIL and Mark Cuban, but they just caught lightning in a bottle with this formula. And again, now it's every other team's challenge to try and emulate that to some degree, to be like, hey, we want to be like Indiana. We want to be the next newcomer to win a national championship. And I thought that stat was crazy, that they're the first new national champion in college football since Florida in 1996. I didn't realize it had been that long since a new kid on the block of sorts showed up and won the dang thing. And just really fun to watch that be punctuated and for that Cinderella story to have a great ending. But I can't help but think about teams like Utah and BYU and Texas Tech and like, okay, well, it feels like those programs are attempting to do similar things. So what's missing? Is there enough rev share and NIL and TV money involved and enough support in the right areas and enough accountability and culture and experienced players? Because Indiana was an old team with veteran players, and that mattered a lot. Like, how does BYU, Utah, and Texas Tech truly get into that realm? But Indiana winning last night made me stop and think again, it can be done. Like, it can be done by these other teams. And so it's just a new hope, if you will, to steal a theme from Star Wars, Spence. Like, Indiana did it. There are other teams that can do it. It'll take something special and their own lightning in a bottle scenario, but I just love that it opened up the possibility of maybe we're on the cusp of true parity in college football and some other new team can do it.
And as you alluded to, I mean, look, so many things have to fall into place. The margins of football, winning and losing in football, they're smaller than any other sport. And John Harbaugh talked about this today as he was introduced as the Giants head coach. So in order to actually do something the way that Indiana just did, you need a lot of things to go your way. You need luck, you need talent, you need coaching, and you need NIL. So we've ultimately been discussing on the show today, Spencer, the boxes that have to be checked in order for your college football team to be successful in the modern day and age. In your opinion, what are those boxes? What does that sound like?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I touched on a few of them in terms that you used as you were setting up this question and this topic. But for me, number one, you have to have the right coach and staff in place. You just do. You got to go get the right guy for your university to establish a feel, and I know the word gets way overused, but the proper culture and accountability. Like, that's, to me, where it starts. Spend whatever you have to find the right guy in your program that fits the ideals and the missions of your specific university and can get the fans engaged and excited. And you do that by winning games and bringing in accountability and holding your players to a different standard. So I feel like you have to build through your coach and staff at the core. And then when you win a few games, then naturally there's more support from ancillary groups outside like NIL and boosters to go and get specific players that said coach is saying, I need this sprinkled in. I need this guy from over here. And now we can start to piece together a championship football team. And we've got the money to do so. But to me, it starts with the staff and creating some excitement that comes naturally from winning games and engaging your fan base and giving them some evidence that things are getting better. Once you do that, then you pull in big on NIL, big boosters, and your players start to just believe in the winning culture that you are establishing. And Indiana is an incredible case study, and they did it so fast. But I've heard so many coaches talk about the value of getting older, experienced players and not like wholesale changes in the portal, but just the right pieces here and there and to go along with a core that you've already built in and established. And so I don't think it's like, hey, we'll wipe the whole thing out, bring in 35 guys from the portal, and then figure it out. I mean, you look at Deion Sanders and kind of what he tried to do at Colorado, and it was fun for a minute, but then it just exploded in his face this year. And that's the risk you run there. With Cignetti, I know that the numbers were bigger the first year he came in because he brought so many players with him at JMU, but they knew who he was. Like, so when he brings players from his old university, like there's a core there. Like they know the expectation, they know what their coach is like, and it's not as drastic as something that happened like we saw at Colorado. And Joey McGuire, to a degree, is trying to do something similar at Texas Tech now by bringing in the best portal players. But he said, like, they have to be the right guys that fit my team and how we want to play. So go get the right guy to coach your dudes and build a winning culture, some excitement, and then just a sprinkle of the portal. That's how I see it. Maybe you see it a little bit differently, but that's where I would start.
No, I mean, I think that's correct. Certainly, you have to have your finances in order. I mean, if you don't have NIL, if you don't have the ability to be a full rev share member, then you're screwed. I mean, that's an obvious one, but you have to have the right coach. In this sport, on this level, a right hire can change the trajectory very quick, and the wrong hire gets you going in the wrong direction. There's no doubt about that. But you referenced some of the tenured players, both Indiana and Miami, and most of the successful teams in college football this year. You look at the rosters, and it's 22, 23, 24, and sometimes even 25-year-old players. Is there a parallel to be drawn between what, well, quite frankly, both BYU and Utah have had at their disposal with RMs coming back and ultimately being able to play until they're 25 and 26 with what these teams are trying to do now? I mean, we've always had some of the older college football players in our state because of the missionary program. Is that something that, you know, these schools that have LDS players can use to their benefit?
You know, I talked to Kalani Sitake about that recently, and he joked, see, like they're finally figuring it out, though their guys don't necessarily take 2 full years off and not have extensive training and are still playing for other college football teams. But he did say, like, there's just power in getting old, like being around the game. And there's more reason than ever before for older players to stick around in college football because of the NIL function. Like, they can make a ton of money staying in college football rather than trying to be ambitious and jump to the NFL. It just has changed so much. And we're seeing it in college basketball to a degree as well. But in college football specifically, there is more of an incentive for upper class players to transfer to different programs where they feel like they have a better chance to win and get paid. And so he believes that we're going to see a major swing here, and it's going to become more and more common with teams doing things like Indiana did this year to convince good NFL caliber players or at least players that are on the cusp of being good enough to play in the professional ranks to, hey, hold on that, pause for a second, why don't you come back, come play for my program where there's an immediate need here. We can pay you more. We have the rev share. We've got the TV contracts. We can give you what you need to stick around for a year, and we believe that we can make you a better player for eventually when you do want to make the jump. And I think it's fascinating how the NIL aspect it's just changed everything. Will it hurt players' draft stock if they're a little bit older before they go to the NFL? Who knows? To be seen. But I don't think it's going to be as drastic as it once was in the past, where it was like, oh, man, I don't want to stick around because I could throw away my NFL future, and I know I want to get my college degree. But when you're making more money potentially and often by sticking around, I think we're going to see teams get older a lot across the board to try and be competitive at the highest level and get on that national championship level.
Speaking of the mission dynamic, and look, no judgment here, because as I often say, it was the best 8 days of my life. But the Rider Lions, the Rider Lions mission, like the culture of the church has changed quite a bit, over the years. I would have loved the 2-hour thing. A year, I might have been able to pull that off. So, again, no judgment because I made it 8 days. But what's the Rider Lion mission situation?
Yeah, I need to clarify some things because I think that people are feeling like he was issued a 1-year call. As I understand it, Rider received a 2-year mission call. And that's the expectation from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that's what they sent to him. And now he as an individual can go to the mission president that he is working with in Orlando, Florida, and say, okay, President, whoever, my intentions are that I'm going to serve 12 months or 14 months or whatever, and then I want to go home. Like, it's still a choice for these missionaries to serve however long they want, but the standard was never changed by the church or BYU, and BYU had, frankly, nothing to do with that. They obviously said, hey, Ryder, we want you to play football for BYU whenever you come back. Like, that's great, but that's your decision. So it's his decision with his specific individual mission president to take his 2-year call and then work through whatever particulars those are. But it is totally exclusive to Ryder, and it in no way was a thing that the church sent out or allowed or said like, oh, well, we'll make an exception because he's a high profile. No, he got called for 2 years, and there's a chance that he could get out there, and I don't know, maybe he's experiencing some life-changing things, and maybe he wants to stay a few more months. I don't know. But to be clear, like, this is not a BYU pushed thing, a church pushed thing. This is just what Rider Lions is deciding to do with his specific mission and his mission president. Because, I mean, you and I know, Spence, missionaries, for whatever reason, medical, emotional hardships, different things, reasons, they come home early all the time. And the challenge is to not judge them for whatever reason. So this is just a Rider Lions thing, and we'll see what he decides to do when he's out there and how things change. But hopefully that helps clear a little bit of the confusion up of what is actually going on there.
Oh, okay. Well, you cleared it up for me because for whatever reason I had read that the plan was for him to serve 1 year, and then he watched Bear Bachmeier, and then it became 2 years. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Everyone out there, no emails, please. No, I for whatever reason, I thought I had read like this is a new, and again, no judgment. Do whatever you got to do. Like the way people treat guys that come home from missions early, I can tell you from experience, is horrific. So I'm not judging the kid at all. I just thought that this was kind of like a new thing because the church has gone from 3 hours to 2 hours. I'm telling you, my son was like, hey, Dad, I'm dating a girl. She's leaving on a mission this week. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry about that. He's like, no, I'm actually going to dinner with her in 2 weeks. I'm like, wait, what? You know, like he was able to go see her at her house where she was doing the MTC thing. And my recollection is when a friend went on a mission, you're like, oh, well, he's dead now. I'll never see him again. And it's just like so many things have changed with the culture of the church. I thought this 1 year mission was like a new thing the church does. I honestly had no idea.
Yeah, no, again, this is as far as it's been explained to me. So I'm just reeling the information that was presented to me over the last week or so, that we issue a call, it's standard, and then individual can decide to do what he or she are going to do with the mission president and establish those parameters, whatever. And what I got from inside the athletic department of BYU was, well, we're in a tricky situation because people think that, like, we're just like, oh yeah, we'll support whatever as long as it's whatever's best for BYU athletics. Like, no, but they do appreciate that Ryder wants to serve at all. And so the athletic department statement in large is, well, who are we to say, no, don't go serve for a year and potentially change your life and grow up and experience these things and help you gain perspective on what matters most in life and change lives potentially, and like the people that you're going to interact with, like how do you impact them and potentially generations, like all of that stuff matters. And it's what Ryder wants to do, and he can opt to go however long he wants, because what's a mission president going to say to him if he's like, hey, President, it's been great. I loved it. Changed my life for a year, but I want to go home. Like, the church has never said, no, you cannot go. It's voluntary service that they're spending their own money on. Like, the Lions family, right? They're paying for it. You can't force him to stay if he doesn't want to stay, but you also don't want to discourage him for going out and serving for a year or 14 months and the good that could do for him and his life and the people that he impacts.
Yeah, and I want to be clear here for our listeners that might be a little bit confused. This is a weird topic to delve into because the bigger portion of me believes it's nobody's business. Like, yes, it's important, and I understand culturally why it's encouraged, but the fact that there's just like this scarlet letter on people if they don't do the whole 2-year thing, like, go get a hobby. Leave us alone. Like, it's nobody's business, okay? Like, if he wants to serve a year, that's fine. 2 years, that's fine. That's my personal opinion. And I can remember my context was colored with this when I interviewed Steve Young a number of years ago on my podcast, when Steve was kind of encouraged not to serve because he was so good at what he did. And the message was kind of sent to him, like, you could probably, like, if your goal is to further the mission and the message of the church, you can probably do that better and touch more people if you just do what you're great at. And Steve oftentimes talked about, that was kind of a confusing message for him. He felt like he was judged by other people because he didn't actually go serve an actual mission. But are you telling me Steve Young hasn't been able to make a little bit of a difference with his massive outreach, as opposed to go serving in Guatemala for 2 years? Like, give me a break, dude. It's nobody's business.
Man, 100%. Gosh, I just want, let Spence cook. I'm going to fan your flame right now, dude. You are going, baby. I love it. And think about Donnie Osmond, Spence. Like, you tell me that guy isn't a good spokesperson for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he's tried to live his life the right way and be the squeaky clean model. Like, he's the nicest dude ever. Didn't serve a mission and probably got judged for it. But could he not be a great conduit to just spreading good in the world? And I think he was. So I love that example of Steve Young as well. And Steve is one of my favorite people because he is he is through and through like a follower of Jesus Christ, and he will tell you as much. And man, I can't agree with you more in that stance. Like, you're right. It's frankly none of anybody's business, but gosh, we live in a social media age where everybody gets to throw their opinion around and judge a kid. And man, it is dangerous. And frankly, sometimes it's really disheartening.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I don't know if you heard, but Kyle Whittingham lives in Ann Arbor now. Moving on.
A2, right?
Yeah, moving on. I mean, this has just been a wild news cycle up here. But from a BYU standpoint, I kind of feel like look, losing Jay is not nothing. Okay, there are some people that believe Jay Hill is the best football coach in the state, and he also lives in Ann Arbor now. But you didn't really lose much more than that, due respect to maybe a couple of other pieces, a secondary coach and a linebacker I'm not even sure was part of the plan. a lot of really good players that played for Utah and were going to play for Utah now live in Ann Arbor, in addition to 6 coaches that were here. So a lot of people up here are feeling a little bit hard done, but I don't want to speak for you. I think it could have been a lot worse as far as players and coaches that, decided to stay instead of leaving.
Yeah, it is the outlier. Like when things like this happen, it is not common for a program to retain as much as BYU did, because I think everybody, the moment Jay Hill was rumored to Michigan, thought, okay, well, immediately, who is he taking with him? Which coaches, which players? And that's why Faleta Satuala floated to the surface very quickly, because he's very close with Jay. And Evan Johnson was another player. It's like, oh, man, if Gennaro Guilford goes to be the cornerbacks coach at Michigan, then Evan Johnson is prime candidate number 1 from BYU to follow him. And there were a few other names that got floated out there, like would a guy like Siale Acera follow him from the linebacker corps? Well, will Isaiah Glasker go with those guys? It was a lot. And so there was real concern. But the fact that BYU, in their minds, lost no major players from last year's Big 12 runner-up was a huge, huge win. And it took a massive effort by Kalani Sitake and his admin, Travis Hansen, who's over NIL for all the sports at BYU, to sit down with each and every one of those athletes, assess what they like, what they don't like, make sure that they felt like they were progressing, that they were being coached the way they wanted to be coached, that they were being compensated fairly, that they were getting what they wanted out of BYU, and that those players wanted to be at BYU because it's bigger than just a paycheck. Like that's been Kalani's thing forever. But gosh, I mean, it just was nonstop for basically 3 straight weeks trying to secure every one of those notable players and keep them from hopping in the transfer portal. And you referenced Max Alford, the linebacker that eventually ended up at Michigan. I know Jay likes Max and he likes his effort, and they feel like they can build and develop him. So it's not to say BYU didn't lose anything, but I think most BYU fans would say, we probably went from an A on defense on the grade scale to a B+ or an A-. But all things considered, when you lose Jay Hill and Gennaro Guilford, like if you go from an A to an A- or an A to a B+, that's pretty stinking good because of how volatile the sport has become. It's free agency. So many players are mercenaries for hire. And it was fascinating to watch everybody, this movement for BYU, run it back. And I know that we hear that phrase ad nauseum, but like it was a full-on collected movement, and it took a huge effort and a lot of support from boosters and NIL and a lot of re-recruiting from Kalani and his staff to bring everybody and make them feel safe and good. Like, hey, you come back, we're going to basically be doing the same thing, running essentially the same defense. You got Gary Anderson here. Kelly Papinga has been around the system, like Sione Puha there, and Kalani obviously overseeing all this. There are enough pieces in place that the core of what BYU has been doing for the past 3 years under Jay Hill is not going to change a whole lot, and that was a nice security blanket for the players to have.
All right, before I say you lose, we saw BYU up here at the Huntsman Center last weekend, and a gutty road win. I mean, look, I saw the line, and I was like, you don't follow this matchup. There's no way this is going to be a blowout. It's very rare that it is. I think the line at one point was 16.5, and my advice to my listeners is don't ever bet on sports, but the under felt like the safe play there. I thought it was a gutty win from BYU. It was Richie Saunders, and, it was Kaba and Richie on the glass that ended up putting BYU over the top. And ultimately, my takeaway, Spencer, with this team, AJ's incredible. He's going to be a great pro. Rob Wright makes them go in a lot of different ways, as their lead guard. So they come up here, they get the win, followed up with a close win over TCU. They got on the road at Tech. That's going to happen in the landscape of college football. Utah is down there on Saturday. So just give me like a little progress report. How are things going with the basketball team?
Yeah, Rob Wright III is a problem for a lot of teams in the Big 12 because he's just so twitchy, and he's a bucket. He's just a walking bucket. And, like, the moment is never really too big for him. And it was Rob Wright III that had BYU in position to maybe stun Texas Tech when he got BYU up by 9 with 9 minutes to go. And Lubbock was feeling weird, like, oh, my gosh, we're not supposed to lose to BYU on our home floor. Then they go on just a crazy run, and, yeah, the wheels fall off for BYU in the last 5.5 minutes. But, like you said, it's college basketball. Momentum shifts on a dime, especially when the home team gets things going. But Rob is very special. And, frankly, he's so special that it's going to take a lot for BYU to keep him around. I mean, he's that good, whether that be his value skyrockets even more and some other shooters come calling or you know, some NBA talent scouts are like, hey, you're not very big, but we feel like we could find a place for you. So, like, he has increased his value a lot. I think BYU is a really, really good team. The one concern is how do they score if AJ is not feeling well, like he was against TCU and he wasn't fully healthy against Texas Tech? Like, what do you do then? Like, you can rely on Rob and Richard, but you need somebody else, whether it's Kennard Davis or Keba Keita, and losing Dawson Baker to injury as your best player off the bench, that has really kind of hurt BYU's bench production. The big three are great, but what happens if one of them are not feeling great or gulp, two of them are not playing well? It's just, that's where BYU does have some concern, but you won 13 straight games. You can forgive the loss at Texas Tech, and the rivalry win at Utah. Every rivalry win on the road in conference play at the Power 4 level is so hard to come by. So it was good. And I thought Utah's guards were fantastic in the game. Like, Utah has good guards. And I think Alex Jensen is building something special. Like, give him some time. He knows how to coach. Like, the ghost screen action on defense, the ghost screen action on offense that he had going was giving BYU all sorts of trouble. Just really good. So I'd give BYU right now at this point of the season, like, they're an A-. They're probably a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. They have every opportunity to improve that stock if you go and beat Arizona on your home floor next Monday on a huge Big Monday ESPN game, or win at Kansas, or you beat Houston. Like, the opportunities are out there. BYU feels like a sure thing 3 seed, and will probably float between number 9 and number 15 in the national rankings. But if you win some of those games against the elite teams now you kind of push into that 2 seed territory.
All right, my guy. Appreciate the time. Good stuff as always. Be good. Have a safe week. We'll chat soon, okay?
You got it, brother. Thanks for the time.
All right, Spencer Litton, BYU TV. Text to win a 4-pack of tickets to an advanced screening of Shelter starring Jason Statham on Tuesday, January the 27th at Megaplex Valley Fair Mall. More details at ESPN700sports.com. Text movie to 877-353-0700. That's movie to 877-353-0700. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The final hour of the program on a Tuesday comes your way next on ESPN 700. Historic win on the college football field last night for the Indiana Hoosiers. Prior to this season, they were the losingest program in the history of college football, and they are your 2025. I know it's 2026, but they are your 2025 college football national championship. Kirk Cignetti with an absolute masterclass in leadership, in coaching, in schematics, you name it, and Indiana's able to hold off a pesky Miami team. Credit the Miami Hurricanes for making that a fair fight. They were a worthy opponent. And the question all day, and quite frankly, the question throughout the landscape of the college football offseason was last night an indicator of just how much this sport has changed? And the things that we tend to complain about, NIL transfer portal, is there a case to be made that it has actually improved the on-field product? Reasonable minds can disagree about that. What can a program like Utah football learn from what Kirk Cignetti just did with the Indiana Hoosiers or BYU? Can a team from the Big 12 replicate it? I think that's a fair question. You know, the Big 10 clearly has solidified itself as the best conference in college football, 3 straight national championships, 3 of the 5 shortest odds for the college football national championship crown next year come out of the Big 12. The SEC, once upon a time, was your king upon the mountaintop in college football, but it's a new age. Texas, the only team out of the SEC in the top 5, shortest odds to win the college football championship next year. And it's been 3 straight years since an SEC team was even in the college football championship. Hello, how are you? 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Tuesday afternoon starts right now. We've had a lively show. We're going to check in with Bill Riley coming up on the road in preparation for tonight's Utah's men's basketball game. They're going to take on K-State on the road. Utah coming off their first Big 12 win of the season over the weekend against TCU. They're going to try to make it 2 straight against a team that has not won a Big 12 game all year long. Kansas State is 0-5 in Big 12 play. They're 9-9 overall. Tip-off is going to be at 7 o'clock, so stay tuned. After we say goodnight at 6, we'll launch over to some pregame coverage and then send you live to Bill and Sean. They'll have the call for you tonight for Utah men's basketball. Utah Jazz are in action tonight, kind of. They're sitting a bunch of players again. Rudy Gobert and the Minnesota Timberwolves are in town. Utah State will look to bounce back against UNLV. They lost their first conference game over the weekend. But, of course, a lot of the conversation today about a historic win for Indiana and Kirk Cignetti. Fernando Mendoza, your Heisman Trophy winner. The University of Indiana football program accomplished a lot of firsts for that school. First number 1 ranking in the AP, first Heisman Trophy win, first Big 12 championship, and, of course, your national championship that was won last night. Again, Miami, a very worthy opponent. It was actually a better game than most people thought, but Indiana is your champ. John Harbaugh introduced today as the head coach of the New York Football Giants. Robert Saleh has been hired as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. We have 6 vacancies as of right now. And, of course, Sean McDermott being fired by the Buffalo Bills certainly is something a lot of people are paying attention to. I was surprised that a lot of the teams actually did not delay. I figured that they would want to interview Sean McDermott after 9 very successful years in Buffalo. Mike McDaniel receiving some steam as far as the next head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Jeff Hafley gets the Dolphins job. He was the Packers defensive coordinator. So the conference championships in the NFL, of course, top of mind. Only 3 football games left until we say goodbye to football as far as the games go during the offseason. Your conference championship games coming up on Sunday are the Patriots and the Broncos. It is the Jarrett Stidham show for the Denver Broncos. And then the Rams and the Seahawks. Lumen Field in Seattle. Of course, Super Bowl after that. Then we are done with football. We always complain when it's the offseason, then it comes and we blink and it's gone. All right, speaking of, the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season starts. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. You can find your community on Prize Picks with the new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with just one click. You can copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tailor-fade our picks with just one click. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN. $700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, the transfer portal is closed. What will Utah football look like next year? What's the current So they just had Scott Van Pelt interviewing Tiger Woods at the Golf League events, this event where pro golfers play on a simulator. And I think Tiger's the business mind behind the entire thing. ESPN has really teamed up with this idea to give it some exposure. I can't for the life of me get into it. So I was thinking, because Tiger, I mean, he is a generationally powerful figure, not just golfer. If Michael Jordan was to come up, would this be like Michael Jordan hosting like a game of horse and ESPN? What's the equivalent?
It would be more like the little tiny baskets that you can shoot real quick at the arcade,
like the Papa Shot.
It wouldn't even be like that though, because it's still got a virtual element that to me is like antithetical to sport. Right? It's a simulator. It's not real. Even if you hit it, it may not. I don't know that that's actually how hard you hit it. I guess maybe it's because I don't trust robots and technology that I can't get on with it. But if you would have asked me 4 or 5 years ago, Tiger Woods golf product, I am all in, no matter what, 100%, zero questions asked. All 4 days that he's playing, I'm watching the tournament. I got it up on my phone, but I have zero interest in watching this. So it's kind of impressive. Respect to our friends at ESPN, but it's not my thing. I'll go to Bad Caddy or whatever the hell it's called and tee up a few balls before I watch someone else do it.
I mean, the interesting thing is most of the big dogs have joined these teams. I mean, these are the best golfers in the world. I would imagine they're cutting a nice paycheck, or maybe Tiger has a little equity piece for anybody who's involved. But the stands are packed. I haven't looked at the ratings at all. And I will admit because it doesn't. And I love watching golf. I didn't used to, but I'm fascinated with the sport now. I badly miss playing. I'm excited for spring in a couple months so I can get back out there. This holds like no appeal to me. And I do enjoy hitting on a simulator. I don't know how accurate they are, but these are the best golfers in the world that have signed up to do this. Like Colin Morikawa is playing, Max Homa, Sahith Theegala, Justin Rose. The best golfers in the world have signed up to play for this league, which is really interesting.
I'm sure they're getting a pretty check, as you mentioned. But that's the other thing. Now, if Tiger asked me to go play with him on a simulator, okay, I'm in. But yeah, I'm gonna watch something else.
Speaking of Tiger Woods, I don't know if you heard the crosstalk today. Before Sean signed off on a show, he played a piece of sound from Ricky Williams, who told a story about the Heisman Trophy presentation. And Fernando Mendoza told him that he doesn't talk to girls. That's like part of his deal. He has decided that that's not going to be part of his life, and basically was like, I should probably get into that, and I need to know how to do it. It reminded me of the story when Tiger Woods was out at the bar, as the legend goes, with Michael Jordan and Derek Jeter. And this is the 90s, okay? So, like, you could not get three bigger superstars from the world of sports in the same place during that time. And as the legend goes, I mean, Derek Jeter's dating history is very famous. Michael Jordan, I'm sure, has done just fine for himself. And this was before Tiger, decided that was going to be probably too big of a part of his life, if we're fair. But apparently Tiger went up to Michael Jordan and said, look, there are all these beautiful women around, and I don't know what to say. What should I say to them? To which Michael said, tell them that you are Tiger Woods. Like, it's pretty fascinating that the best player in college football, like, typically you would think they're dating all over the place, and our guy doesn't even want to talk to women. I found that rather fascinating.
Yeah, I get it. I don't know. I heard your cross talking. For me, like, I didn't play basketball to like pick up on chicks.
Not at all?
No.
Huh.
And maybe that's why I'm 30 and single and still just spend all my time with sports.
Well,
right?
You could be 47 and single.
But yeah, for me, it's like that's the kid in me, right? That's the 8-year-old in me that just loves basketball and is zeroed in on that and ignoring kind of everything else. Maybe maybe not my benefit, but that's pretty interesting to hear from Fernando Mendoza. Maybe that leads him some places, though.
Sure.
Focus.
Remove the distractions. Absolutely. I had an AAU coach that was like adamant that we actually don't. He's like, stay away from it. You're too young. It's distracting.
That's fair.
All on that grind. Well, we'll be hoping that Fernando Mendoza finds love. And look, once Tiger actually figured it out, I think it's fair to say that may have been a slight distraction in his life. Can we just leave it there?
I would say slight, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Don't forget, Utah men's basketball tonight. They're taking on Kansas State on the road. So, of course, we're going to be cheering for Al, maybe our second straight Big 12 win. That'll come your way at 7 o'clock. Porter, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of The Drive?
How about some hoops talk? Tim McMahon for our NBA Daily Assist. We'll get a little football in with Craig Bowler-Jack as well, but, of course, the Jazz in action, so we'll chat with Craig Bowler-Jack, some college football with our friend Quinn McLean of Sumer Sports, and then the return of our friend Tony Jones on the program today.
All right, TJ will stop by. That'll be a good Wednesday show. And with that, we'll say goodnight. Special thank you on this Tuesday to Ted Robinson, Bill Riley, Dave Bartu, and Spencer Linton. For any of the sound you may have missed from the show today, go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do, in our space every afternoon for 4 hours. Check out the podcast page. It is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review. If you have some time, we ask you to do that. Say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. It actually helps the show if you would do that for us. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying good night. Have a great Tuesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Wednesday edition of The Drive. And as always, you can catch that right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.